Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back.
What's up, chat?
Yeah, we got another long one. So last time we went over the first 10 films. So it was like number 100 to number was it like 89?
90, 91.
91. Yeah,
91, because I remember that was weird for me.
Yeah, from 100 to 91, and so now we're doing the next, which is 89 to 81, or 90 to 81.
90 to 81, yeah.
Yeah. So, last time we had a really good discussion and a lot of stuff got covered. And our lists were very different, which was awesome. So we got to talk about a lot of different films.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, let's keep it going. Do you want to start? Or do you want me to start? How do you want to go with it?
Well, I guess we could just do like a little intro or like a recap kind of a thing of like, you know, these lists are like the way I describe it is kind of like a personality profile of like you asked me right now in November, like what are my top 100 films? It's such an impossible task to tear down. Even if you haven't seen a lot of movies, I'm telling you, you've seen more than 100 movies and it is hard to pick favorites. So I don't know how like favorites they are, but like I kind of basically did this one by feel and I'm like, does this feel like it kind of represents me and my tastes? And my tastes, if you haven't figured it out already, are just trash, gutter tier trash. Oh, look, an art film. Trash.
Yeah. Lots of fun B movies. A lot of Sam Jackson. A lot of other the big personalities, right?
But these are only the 100, right? If you open me up to more, then I'll give you more trash. I'm really trying to. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to keep it classy. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, the lists are fun because it makes you pare down all the stuff. And like you were talking about before, you know, I love all these Brian De Palma movies, but I can't have all of them.
I can't have all of them, yeah.
I got to pick one. I got to pick whichever the one that I really like is. Or, you know, for me, it's like, yeah, I like these Steven Spielberg movies, but I'm going to have like 10? Probably not. I'm going to have to pare them down a little bit. But exactly. I will have like 7.
Yeah, right. No, and you know what I was thinking of too is what I think we should do eventually once we get to the end of the line. If we could plug these into like an IMDb list or something, and then filter kind of just for fun, just to see like which names popped up the most. You know, like which actor, like you know, like a Sam Jackson or something like that. That's just in every movie. Like which one had the biggest presence on your list? Which directors had the biggest presence? I think that'd be fun to do once we get to the end of this thing.
Yeah, for sure. Like see what the big influences are.
Yeah, or just like who's there in the shadows, just like in every movie that you like.
Yeah, you just like, oh, it's John Cazale the whole time.
Yeah, because I wish, but no, because that stuff happens. Like when I was doing my 1800 Blu-rays, and I was just like, oh, this guy that you know I can't even remember his name is in like 100 of my movies. Like who the fuck is he? So that happens. So it's fun. It's like a fun metadata exercise to do that. But anyways. We can.
Yeah, I love the metadata stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think I'll start off. So I got an interesting one to start off with.
Yeah.
This is a film that it's sort of a bit like a miniseries. So this film, I believe, is 6 hours long.
Okay.
It's called The Best of Youth. It's directed by Marco Tullio Giordana, I believe is his name. He's a Italian director. So this film, I think the best way to understand this film, it's basically sort of an epic story told about two brothers over the course of 4 decades, and it tracks their life from the 1960s to 2003. And it's about how their life changes and how the political, social, and economic upheaval in Italy changes their lives as well as the country's lives and how that affects them and everything. Like the big comparison I would give for this would be like something like Boyhood or like the Before trilogy.
That was the first thing that came to my head. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like seeing these characters, how they change over time and how, you know, it's like seeing life basically over a long span of time. And it just, you know, one thing that's really cool about these films is like, it's really hard to create a true coming of age film in like one moment where like, yeah, we went down to find this dead body and then we found it and then we changed and became adults.
Right.
Realistically, it happens like there's a couple of successive things that happen over a long period of time.
Correct,
that cumulatively changes you. And this type of, and again, this is 6 hours. 6 hours, basically 2 parts. And there was even like they broke it up into a miniseries, TV series. But it's really like I've just like kind of watched the film on a whim, and I just really loved it. It just struck me as being like beautiful and powerful, and the way they depict, the changes over time and how the brothers, they kind of go apart and then they come together towards the end. And it's very satisfying, satisfyingly epic in the way that it handled the story.
That's cool. I love coming of age stories, and like you said, not necessarily, I love The Stand By Me's as much as anyone else, but like something that kind of expands the experience a little bit more. That's not just like a 2 hour 45 happy feely, we went through some shit and now we're, different people kind of a thing. Like that seems really interesting to me, to just kind of let it breathe and do all these different sagas, because, if you really, really think about it, your life is kind of broken up into chapters, whether you like it or not. So that's cool. That's cool.
It is.
I should check this one out.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it for anyone. I think it's probably one of those like not a lot of people have heard about. It's an Italian film. It's in Italian. It's sort of a film because they just kind of released it as a film, but they also released it as like a TV show and a miniseries. It's very long. Like that's a big commitment. 6 hours. It's a big commitment. But, if whatever way possible for people to consume it, I think it's definitely worth your time, because it's a great piece of art and piece of story. I'd say.
I think a miniseries is a really cool way to do stuff like this, or at least to watch it. As much as it kind of annoys me, because I know that it's all one thing, because when they shoot movies, they shoot tens of hours of film. So it's like it was all done at once. So like to watch it as a miniseries, it's kind of weird. But that's just because I've been conditioned by the HBO series that are all like shot at different times with different directors and stuff. But as like a singular thing, I think miniseries might be a good way to digest it. I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my number 90, The Best of Youth. So what's your number 90?
Cool. I just adding to that watch list, man. All right, so
it's probably infinite, right?
It's impossible. But who knows? Maybe one day I'll be old and have nothing to do. So number 90 was so here's Ibrahim, bringing us the art films, and then I'm over here just dragging us down. Number 90, I was debating whether or not to put it on the list, because it's like not that, it's really not that special. But it would betray me to not have this on the list for a couple reasons. And it's 100% because of when it came out and the 12-year-old boners that it gave me. All of the different boners. The movie is Triple X with Vin Diesel.
Oh, Triple X, yeah.
Triple X.
That was a fun one.
It's a fun one. It's a dumb one. It is profoundly stupid. It is so this is the follow-up basically to the Fast and the Furious, which was Point Break with race car drivers, or just straight racing, I should say. And then just studio movie. All right, Rob Cohen, you made Fast and Furious. Vin Diesel was the producer. You guys work well together. We got a script in the drawer somewhere. Fucking go do it. And this is basically like Mission Impossible for stupid people. In that Mission Impossible is like not that intelligent to begin with, but like this is really
let's really go dumber. Like it's too smart.
Like Mission Impossible at the end of the day is a Brian De Palma film, so like it's got some things going for it. Triple X is just like dumber. No, dumber. Dumber. Yeah. And what I like about it, it came out in 2002. It came out just mid fucking MTV, Jackass, Viva La Bam, mid new metal, Deftones, Linkin Park, all of that stuff. Like
the skateboarding stuff too, right?
The skateboarding stuff, yes. The Tony Hawk himself is in this
Tony
movie.
Hawk, yeah. Oh my God, yes.
All the extreme. There's a scene in the beginning of the movie where Xander Cage, played by Vin Diesel, he goes to like, there's like this party because they pulled off this stunt, and again, some of those things were shot in Sacramento. I moved to Sacramento when I moved to the States, so that was exciting too. There's just a lot of elements that make this movie kind of like memorable for me, and also I just watched it over and over again because it was one of the like 3 movies I had on DVD or whatever. So I just watch it over and over again. But then it's kind of making me realize, and you will see as the list goes on, I have this like nostalgia feeling in me for like European films or things that take place in Europe, but like are done in a different way. And this movie is none of those things, but it does take place in Europe. It takes place in Prague, I believe in Czech Republic. And it almost feels like, I don't know, it just gives me those like cold Eastern European street vibes, but it's Vin Diesel in like a fur coat shooting people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a really dumb thing, and I feel like that only works for me. But I mean, this movie, I can't justify it in any way, shape, or form. It is a popcorn movie. It is a get high movie. It is a don't pay attention to it movie. But for me, having seen it hundreds of times on repeat, it's taken on like a whole other meaning.
Yeah.
And it just felt like wrong to not put it on the list. There's a lot of other action movies, and that's the other thing too. Is primarily I tend to wallow in the filth with the action movies and the B movies and the Dolph Lundgrens and the Steven Seagals and all of those offshoots. But this one, so like for an action movie to make the list, like there's 18 different Michael Bay movies I could have put on the list. But for an action movie to make this top 100 list, it has to stand out in a particular way. And this one does, for like those connections. Like the movie opens up with a Rammstein song. And fucking Rammstein was huge at the time, and you know I was huge into them. So just all of those little things. I love the cast. I love the guy who plays the bad guy. He also was in Kingdom of Heaven. I forget his name. I love the girl in it.
Dario Argento's daughter.
Yeah, she turned into a piece of shit, but nevertheless at the time.
Oh, I never heard about that. Okay.
Oh, it is really bad Me Too stuff. But
no.
Oh yeah.
I mean, look, these royalty people, like, you know, do all kinds of dumb
exactly
stuff.
like, and let's be honest, like her acting in this movie is dog shit.
Dog shit.
It is dog ass. However, you know, it's the way the how this shit works, right? How Hollywood works. But for whatever reason, her being European and having that shitty accent and that like, you know, that like the like I don't know what's going on face the whole time. It just kind of like works. It all works together. They spend a night at like this chateau, and like there's a stripper in Vin Diesel's room, and there's like we pause the movie for 3 minutes so that we can watch the striptease scene. Like it's just every 12-year-old boner rolled into one movie, and it's got Samuel Jackson. So it had to make my list for all of those reasons.
Like I feel like this is a film. They knew who their audience was, right? Like they're throwing in all this stuff, the skateboarding, the extreme sports, right? The
metal music,
strippers, the metal, like the weird stunts, Samuel Jackson, and just get this guy, you know, who's a big action star, but we could maybe get him kind of on the cheap. And Vin Diesel at this time, he wasn't big yet, but he was kind of getting bigger.
This was kind of like his breaking moment, was the Fast and the Furious, this movie, and you know whatever came next. Yeah,
and he like, when did Pitch Black come out? That was 2000.
That was a little earlier. 2000 was Pitch Black was the one that like kind of made people aware of Vin Diesel as like an action actor. Yeah. Because before that he was doing like dramas, and he was doing like Boiler Room and shit like that.
Yeah, Boiler Room, yeah. Yeah, it's a great time capsule kind of film.
It is. But in a weird way, it's a time capsule, but it also kind of predates a lot of the modern action movie stuff, because if you really think about it, like it's all the action movies these days are kind of built around set pieces. And this movie very much feels like it was like, whatever, we're going to have some shenanigans, and then we're going to get to the cocaine fields where he's, you know, jumping motorcycles over exploding buildings. And then we're going to do some other stuff. And then, we're going to get to Prague, and where, you know, he's going to have a car chase on the street. So like the absolute extremity of it all is, I feel like, rolled into the other Fast and Furious movies, beginning with Fast 5 and stuff like that. And now we see it in all of the, you know, big Mission Impossibles that are all built around set pieces. So I feel like this was one of the early ones that kind of did that, but just like in a really dumb way.
Yeah, it's an interesting film. It's a great one. I definitely remember watching it at the time and like, think, oh yeah, that's fun. You know, just like it's a fun time.
Yeah.
Because like you know, we weren't at the point where we are now, where it's like there's the cookie cutter, Fast and Furious, Mission Impossible, Marvel, DC. Right. You know, there's kind of at this point, what big stuff, unless it's Christopher Nolan, that exists outside of those spheres.
Absolutely. We were just talking about, I don't remember what movie it was we were talking about last week, but like the studios would just like make things. And sometimes they would make action movies. Sometimes they would make like random thrillers that you've never heard of. So yeah, like this is another one that like they were trying to launch a franchise. And even if they didn't launch the franchise, which they did for better or worse, it was like, you know, it's a movie, it's a video game, it's a Monster Energy drink tie-in. It's like, it's all of these things, and it kind of just works that way.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, that's a really cool one. So Triple X.
Triple X, baby, made the list.
All right, so my number 89 is sort of another trailblazing film. So this is a film, Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh yeah,
directed by Arthur Penn. So this film is interesting on a lot of levels. The acting is great. Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway, Gene Hackman, Gene Wilder is randomly in this movie.
The Hackman cometh.
Hackman, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how big he was at the time when this came out.
He wasn't. Yeah. He kind of wasn't.
And then he got bigger. He got bigger. That's for sure.
Yeah.
In the 70s.
I told you a couple months ago. I watched like all of his '70s movies and like all the interviews, and he was just like basically nobody knew my name until Bonnie and Clyde. But he was like doing theater and shit like that. Yeah.
This film. What's so cool about this film is like this film feels like the predecessor of what the '70s films kind of became.
Oh, absolutely. It's on every one of those lists. It's on every one of those new Hollywood movies.
Yeah, hyper-violence, the sexual nature, this sort of doomed love story, all of it. And I feel like it's there's something in earlier I talked about Jesse James, Assassination of Jesse James. That film, I feel like these two films kind of talk about the same kind of thing, which is like it's the American celebrity culture that's kind of so universal, even as far back as Jesse James. That's kind of part of the thematic purpose of that film, is to talk about that. Same with this.
But they had, in the old days, they had all these great outlaws that were kind of known for their legends and their myths, and that's kind of like the modern day, and especially back then, a lot more recent version of that. Yeah,
where there'd be these little, I forget what it was, like penny or dime something novels.
Yeah.
Penny
Dreadfuls?
Something like that.
That's like a horror thing.
Yeah, something, I forget what it's called, but it'd be these really small, pulpy, cheap novels they produce. It'd be like, oh, hey, here's the story of how Jesse James robbed, those bankers.
Yeah.
And this is like, oh, hey, here how Bonnie and Clyde, they screwed over whoever, and there's that scene where they rob the bank, but then they leave the money for some poor guy who's trying to do a withdrawal or something.
Yeah.
They they have this what'd you call it? Like they have this chivalry or something, like they have a code.
They have like a class to them, yeah.
They're not just like out trying to screw over people. They're the screwed over people trying to survive in this horrible world of the Depression. So yeah, I think it works on a lot of those levels. And again, the ending is just so classic.
Yeah.
So classic. Like if we don't have that ending, I think a lot of the stuff that we like
exactly
in terms of the action, the violence, it just maybe doesn't. It maybe gets pushed back.
It gets pushed back a lot. Yeah.
Like if this doesn't get made, like maybe the people, the suits when they're making The Godfather, like I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't get killed like that. Maybe,
exactly.
Maybe they shoot him in the head once and that's it, and we don't see it, and we don't see it.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Because that's exactly it. That's one of the frustrations for me was. As I was digging through and educating myself on like the old Hollywood, the different eras of Hollywood, coming from the European background where everything is just laissez-faire, everything's out there and there's no rating systems for anything unless it's like straight up, beheadings or whatever. There's no limits on stuff, and then there's all of these great movies with all these great actors that I was watching, 40s, 50s, whatever, but they all had to be approved, right? So a lot of the stuff had to be kind of in my imagination. Even Hitchcock's best work, it's like it works because it's subliminal and because you don't see it but you're thinking about it, kind of a thing. Where I basically conditioned myself to just see everything all the time. And so Bonnie and Clyde was a great like breath of fresh air when I got to that era of Hollywood. Is like, finally, they're showing us the dirty like reality of what's happening here. And not just like saying, like Scarface, I watched the original Scarface and it's like, great, but people are, they just go pew, 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 pew. And there's like, and then they fall on the ground. I really wanted to see that stuff. Cause like, it gives you this sense of this like false, if you just believe everything you see in movies, which you shouldn't, but like they do have that power. They make you think that like everything was kind of more Puritan back in the day, which
Yes.
it is not the case. Like people have been fucking filthy degenerates forever. So it was just nice to see that in a movie of that era in particular.
Yeah, they kind of whitewash history, and that's what those 30s and 40s films did. Or at least they, there's the interesting like the pre-code era where, there's all these where it was just like innuendo up the ass, just innuendos for days. Yeah. And it was like you wouldn't see it, but they would say it in as many ways as they could. Like, yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. I'm gonna do this to you.
Yeah. So much so that you have to question yourself. Like, was that the intent? Like, are they really saying? Because like they wouldn't say that.
Yeah, just like stuff like the Lady Eve comes to mind. But yeah, this is like they show it to you. They're not holding back anymore.
Yeah,
it's over. That stuff is over. Our protagonists are going to get savagely murdered at the end of the film, and you're going to see them die in slow motion. Taking like 100 bullets or something.
It goes on for a minute, yeah.
Absolutely one of the great endings in film history.
Yeah, and it influenced so much, not just that ending, but like the story, like how many movies and stories and novels have you read about like backwoods people? Like we were just talking about the devil all the time, like the gentleman and his sweetheart, and they go on a road trip and they start killing people or maiming them or whatever. It's like it influenced that in the culture because of the real events, and then also because of this movie, it like probably reawoke that.
Yeah, what was that Tarantino movie that he didn't direct?
True Romance?
I don't think it was True Romance. The Mickey and Mallory?
Oh, Natural Born Killers.
Natural Born Killers.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's another one.
Natural Born Killers is like, again, it's in the same vein of this, right?
It's on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So so that's my number 89, Bonnie and Clyde.
It's classic.
Yeah. So what's your number 89?
It's a classic of a different we could juxtapose these. They did similar things for different eras. But like a classic in a schlocky way. How I like it. And when I was talking earlier, how I like to just I basically got to a point where I like 8 or 9 or 5 or 6 of this filmmaker's films. How do I kind of condense them? Ultimately, I condensed Paul Verhoeven into Basic Instinct, and that's my number 89. I love Basic Instinct. It's not perfect. It's not a great film. It's not even like a great thriller by all of those standards. I mean, it is, but it's not like, I feel like it was trying to be Silence of the Lambs, but like with sex or something. I'm not exactly sure what it was trying to do. Many more intelligent and educated people have talked about Basic Instinct, but it did do the things, whereas Bonnie and Clyde showed us the violence, Basic Instinct showed us the beavers. And this was another one of those films that like, it's just, I don't know. It's noirish. It's dark. It's basically like a cheap thriller, like a pulp novel. Michael Douglas in the lead doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, especially due to how like the age difference and everything. But it's like a fun. It's a very Hollywood version of that type of story, but it was like filtered through this like insane. I believe he's Danish filmmaker who. He's either Danish or he's from the Netherlands or something. Sorry about that. But basically Verhoeven, like he got his start in the 70s, like making these like crazy movies with Rutger Hauer and stuff. And then he came to Hollywood. He made RoboCop. He made Total Recall, which were known for how over the top the gore was in some of the stuff. And then Basic Instinct is basically where he's like, okay, I think I've shown you enough heads exploding. Now I'm going to show you just like all of this psychosexual stuff, which was not necessarily new at the time. Like Body Heat was out and stuff like that. But I think it like for the pop culture, it kind of exploded because everybody started talking about that scene in the interrogation room and stuff like that. And I like it for that reason, for like, it's like a historical document, but also I like cheap thrillers. I really like cheap thrillers. And I think Basic Instinct is probably the most polished you can get in the vein of a B movie, because it feels like a B movie to me. it's not very high art, but like some of the ways that those sex scenes are shot is like very, very artful, more artful than the movie deserves, honestly. But I really like it for that reason. It's just like this kind of cheap B movie thriller, kind of elevated a little bit by the talent involved and the director and everything, which of course he would go on to make the trashiest of trash, which is what I love him for. He made Showgirls later on. But Basic Instinct is the one where kind of like everything is as reined in as it could be, but without like the full kind of censorship. Like this is it broke a lot of boundaries, in terms of what can be shown in movies and stuff. And I appreciate that because I'm all about just show me everything, give it to me raw. And Basic Instinct, again, I love cheap thrillers. I love cheap movies. I love, psychosexual stories. It doesn't really hit as well as some of the other movies on my list, but I had to put it on here for like just the effect that it had and the effect that it had on me. I was just like this is kind of the entry point. I was like, okay, so here's the popcorn version of like a sexy thriller, and then now watch the good ones.
Yeah, this is a good one. I definitely remember it too. It was very ubiquitous. What that scene meant in the culture at the time.
And if you think about it now, it's just kind of like, especially with like the shit that you can see on the internet, it's like not a big deal. It honestly kind of just, it fits the movie even better now. It removed from the kind of shock value of the periodicals and the newspapers were writing. I'm like, this fucking movie's crazy. Whoa. Like now you can just kind of watch it as a movie if you've never heard of it before and just be like, I get it.
Yeah, you're not gonna get swept up in this other.
Just be like, my god, they showed that on the movie screen. Whoa, which is weird because we've been seeing dicks in movies for 100 years.
Yeah,
and you show one beaver. And
one cat, and everyone goes crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the opening too of that movie is like pretty cool because like there's like the sex scene. And then she just starts killing the guy. She starts killing him with the ice pick, and you're like, whoa. And it also, like, what's interesting, too, is, like, she's such a, I forget the name of the character, but she's such a, like, she's like, empowered sexually.
Catherine Trammell.
She's empowered sexually, but she's also very dangerous. Mm-hmm. She's almost got that kind of Black Widow vibe, where it's like, you want to be with her, but she'll kill you. She will kill you.
Mm-hmm.
But that almost makes it more enticing because like
that's the entire pull of the movie, right?
Yeah. And you're just like, will she or won't she with the protagonist? Is she gonna do it? Is she the killer? I mean, you're pretty sure, like 99% she's the killer.
Yeah, the kind of it flips in the second half, and then it turns into kind of like a will they won't they love story, but with like murder. So that I don't like about it, but like the first half of the movie, like you said, is very strong and very like, again, it's just Verhoeven coming in and saying like, how more blood, more tits, and I like that. You know.
Yeah, he did so. It was later on that he did Hollow Man, right?
Yeah, it was about.
Yeah, Hollow Man was another where he just does not hold back.
No,
does not hold back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and in this movie, he's like, yeah, you're gonna get the sex and the violence and the death and the uncertainty, and it's really well played. I think
it is well played, and especially again for like a polished Hollywood production, this is probably like at the time it's pretty much like as extreme as it'll ever get. And I really like that about it because it is really big budget and really polished, and there's a lot of big names in it, and big names involved in making it. But yeah, it's just like, again, they just picked like a European out of obscurity, out of just making these like extreme European films, and then they were like, money, make movies, and then it worked. So I like that about it.
So this was shot in San Francisco?
I think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe San Francisco's the setting, which is cool.
I love San Francisco movies.
San Francisco, it's kind of unfortunate that it's kind of we don't get it as much because San Francisco is actually a very cinematic city. Bullet.
Oh, it's so cinematic. Yeah.
Vertigo, one of the greatest films of all time, set in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
It just and the most recent stuff is like Ant-Man. Basically, both the Ant-Man films were shot there.
And Venom, I think.
Yeah, Venom was shot there too. Mhm.
I know this because when I was at San Francisco State, I had people that were like, I knew people who were working on those
Working
films, and
on
they're
it.
like, they're making movies in San Francisco again. And I was taking this class about like the history of the city, and this professor was like lamenting. He was like, "There's so many good films shot here in the
Yeah.
'60s and '70s, and now it's just kind of like
It's gone. Oh, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. That's a really good one shot in the
That's a
city.
fucking great one. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a really great one.
Barry Jenkins' first film, I believe, was shot in San Francisco too.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to shoot there now as much, especially in comparison to like Canada or some, places like that.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's all budget and stuff. But again, like they had it's just there's so much money and polish behind Basic Instinct, and they went to San Francisco and they did all this stuff, and I like that a lot. Yeah. And it's moody. I like moody films. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Basic Instinct. That's a good one. All right. So yeah, for my number 88, my next film is a film called A Place in the Sun. So this is a George Stevens film.
Ooh.
It's pretty much like George Stevens is the director. It's pretty much sort of like a tragic love story. And the acting is excellent.
I fucking love Montgomery Clift.
Yeah. So this is probably one of the best Montgomery Clift performances. So it's Montgomery Clift, Elizabeth Taylor, and Shelley Winters. And those are like basically the three main characters. And there's this little love triangle that ends up happening between the three of them. And so the film is about, so Montgomery Clift plays this guy, George Eastman, who he's sort of estranged from the wealthy part of his family. And then he meets up with them again. And then he kind of gets brought into their circle. Like, I guess it's his uncle owns this really big company. And so then he hires him to work for the company. And then he has one rule. One rule is don't date any of the women at this company. Of course, he breaks that immediately.
Right.
And then like
where's
literally
the drama?
Yeah. And so then he's rising up in the ranks very quickly. And Shelley Winters' character, Alice, their relationship becomes at odds with both him becoming more successful and his relationship with Elizabeth Taylor, Angela, she's someone who's also kind of very well off and rich. And the Alice character is more sort of like a poor, working class person. And so he gets stuck in this basically predicament where he's like, he's in love with Angela, but he doesn't want to break up with Alice, and he doesn't know what to do. And he makes some very bad decisions. Makes some very, very bad decisions. And it's super tragic and it's super sad and powerful, but the acting, Montgomery Clift is so good in this movie. He is so good in this movie. And yeah, the thing that comes to my mind is like, seeing Montgomery Clift in this movie, like I feel like you're starting to see the evolution of like the way that big time actors act. Like his style is different from like
I love seeing that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, from like the the classic James Stewart,
Gregory Peck or whatever. Gregory
Peck and Humphrey Bogart. And like it's interesting to see, him and James Dean, I feel like we're really, and Marlon Brando were like really the big time pioneers of this different style of acting. It's just so interesting to see, to see them. I really, really like this film, and it's really powerful and well done and well shot and well directed. It's just a great film.
Yeah, it's George Stevens is one of the ones that one of the directors I want to go through and kind of do like the deep dive on, because I really like. I mean, he's one of the greats, so I feel like I should. Yeah.
Yeah, this was the one I'd seen a while ago. I watched a little bit of it again recently just to kind of pick up, what I liked about it. And just, immediately I was like, because it does such a great job of setting up this, the main character. Like it makes you really feel for him, because he's basically like, just imagine a guy. This is actually a perfect example. Like, have you seen those memes? The guy, the Native American guy who was like on his surfboard, and he did this TikTok thing, and he was like drinking some cranberry juice, and then went viral.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Fleetwood Mac thing. Yeah.
The Fleetwood Mac thing. So this character to me feels like that guy.
Okay.
He's just like a guy, and then like, he's going on in life, and he's a good person, and then suddenly he's given this opportunity that makes him really well off, but then he's given too much too quickly, and then he kind of just,
And
just
he's got like a character flaw or something that just like makes him make the wrong decisions all the time.
Yeah, because he just can't be honest. He can't be honest with people.
Got it. That's
pretty
cool.
much.
That's a cool setup.
Yeah, it's a great film. It's a great film, and like, yeah, you just love the character at the beginning, and then you're like, oh no, don't, no,
rein
dude,
it in.
Don't fuck this up, man. You're fucking it up, and then he just, spirals.
That's so great. That's so great. Yeah, I gotta check that out. I love Montgomery Clift. I really do.
Yeah, he's great. Like, I was just thinking of like, what his best performances are, because like, unfortunately, I forget what happened with him. I think
it was like, I don't know exactly what happened. Yeah,
I think he kind of had some problems. Like
I know I know he was for sure involved in a car crash. I just don't remember if that was the cause of death or not. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think he had the car crash, and that just like kind of messed him up.
It happens with a lot of these. Yeah,
like it didn't take him out, but it got into his head too much. But yeah, like another classic example of his film where he has a good, interesting performance, like From Here to Eternity is another film that a lot of people know him from.
Yeah,
so,
it's a bummer.
Yeah, I think there might be some other films, but yeah, he has.
I like him in. Did you say Wild River by any chance?
No, that's a good one.
Oh, it's so good. I love him in that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got some. He's got more than James Dean, but I feel like they have about the same number of really good films. Like James Dean did like 4 films or something, 4 or 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
But like all of his were like really good performances. I think.
Yeah.
For Monty Clift, like he's got like 4 or 5 good performances. And yeah,
for sure.
This is probably my favorite of all of them.
Cool.
So,
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, that's my number 88. So what's your number 88?
My number 88, we're talking about actors that we love. My favorite actor of all time, Al Pacino, is in this movie. This movie is not that well regarded, but I feel like if people start to discover it and rediscover it year after year, decade after decade, I think it like picks up every time you see it. I think it does get better. I've seen this movie like many, many times. It's Insomnia. It's Christopher Nolan's, directed by Christopher Nolan, Insomnia. It's a remake of a Norwegian film, I believe, of the same name. It's one of those things where, Hollywood is just like, this is a movie that exists. Do it here. But they just so happen to give it to Christopher Nolan. And so I feel like this is the one, more than like, I don't know if maybe like all of his other movies, except maybe like Memento or Tenet, I guess, where like we get to see just like him, kind of like his visual art, like his artiness come through a little bit. Tenet is a bad example, but like just his more like his directorial sensibilities that is not just a matter of I have 8 IMAX cameras set up and I really want to do this crazy like physics driven thing. It's actually about a character. Which is whoa! It's about not. He's like the prototype for all of the Nolan characters. So basically, Al Pacino plays this LA detective who gets called to Alaska, where this girl's been murdered and nobody gives a shit because it's Alaska. I believe it's Alaska. I hope I'm not getting the story wrong, but it's basically. So there's the whole murder mystery. There's the procedural. There's the detective drama. He gets paired up with Hilary Swank, which is another one of my favorite actors just ever. Super underrated, I think. So they're piecing the stuff together and they find out who the killer is. About halfway through the movie, more than an hour into the movie, we find out that the killer is Robin Williams. And Robin Williams in this movie, dude, he is so fucking good. There's a great scene, the two of them when they meet for the first time and they have their first conversation on like a trolley or something, and Robin Williams is just like waxing lyrical and he's talking about all of these things. This like, I basically like like a reined in Charlie Manson. He's just like, all these people, they're trash and I'm trying to, fucking clean whatever the earth and then Al Pacino, he's like, he tells Al Pacino, he's like, you don't know anything about me. And then Al Pacino looks at him and he gives it like one of the greatest lines. He's like, you're as mysterious to me as a toilet is to a fucking plumber. Like there's just this great back and forth between these two, and it's worth watching. If you don't care about any of the police stuff, at least for the performances for Robin Williams and Al Pacino. But he does a good job of again, Nolan. He's starting to kind of figure out how to get inside your head, not just by way of like we're playing the movie backwards, whoa, but like psychologically, because there's a lot of psychological stuff in this movie. Al Pacino is being basically worn down by this guy. And the title of the movie Insomnia is because he's in Alaska. They happen to be in their like it's day for 6 months thing. He can't fucking sleep like the entire time, bar none. And so Al Pacino puts in this really great like subtle performances. Like most of his good performances are subtle, I feel like, where you could just feel the exhaustion in his face as the movie goes on. Like he just gets more baggy and just more worn out by the killer, the trying to solve the crime, and this crazy motherfucker who's out there killing girls that nobody gives a shit about because they're in the middle of Alaska. So it's a fun, I don't want to say fun, but it's I think it needs rewatching, and more people need to give it more of a chance. It's the only movie that Nolan directed that he didn't write the script for. So it's the only one where, like, again, it's not just like his ideas of like, this is what I want to do with this story, and I'm going to mechanically do it this way. I'm going to tell you the story this way. It's more character and psychologically driven. And I love a good psychological thriller. And I think people should check out Insomnia, but it's definitely on the top 100 because I've seen this movie a lot of times and it never disappoints. It never gets worse. It always gets richer the more time I watch it, the more times I watch it. And there's a couple really great like cinematography wise. There's a lot of really good shots in it. There's a shot of him in an alleyway that just looks gorgeous, dirty, wet alleyway, stuff like that. Stuff that really hit home for me. Robin Williams in this movie again, Al Pacino. I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's one I saw a long time ago, probably 15 years ago. And
same. I saw it a long time ago. Yeah, and I went back to it though, and that's why it kind of crept up the list basically the more times I saw it. But go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like that's one I probably should watch again. I recently rewatched Dunkirk. I saw a 4K of Dunkirk, and that kind of blew my mind, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like seeing these plane shots with the fucking with the IMAX camera, it's like, whoa, like this is what it was like. But yeah, I feel like that's one that I need to watch again. I like basically all of his films. I'd say that's the one that I feel the most lukewarm about. I don't feel, but I've only seen it once in
Sure,
like I've seen it once in like 20 years, so I probably need to see it again. And there's a lot to like about it. The director's great, the actors are insanely great, and the subject matter is good too. So it's like this, it's like one of those things where it's like this should work, and I just gotta find, maybe sometimes you gotta find, I don't know. There's some films for me where like I have to figure it out, like I don't get it for a while, and then I get it, and I'm okay.
I feel that.
I got it.
I feel that, yeah, because at first, we keep talking about Christopher Nolan, and there's like a level of emotional detachment. Even when there's emotion there, it feels like it's injected. Like it's not organic. Or not as organic as he might want it to seem. So there's a level of like cold detachment. But I feel like that works in this movie's favor because it's literally set in a cold environment, and all of the characters are just basically depressed, which I really fuck with. So
he's a super plot driven guy. He's all about plot, I think, really. Like he's so into like, how can I mechanically put the plot together to create this thing? Yeah. And that's what he's always, but he's really good at it. He's really good at it.
But I think that's why this movie is the black sheep. It's the outlier, because the plot is, it's a little convoluted and it's kind of interesting, but it's not really what the movie is about. It's about the way that this case and the whole kind of thought of being a detective degrades this guy like mentally and on a personal level. And there's some drama, there's some like backstory that we find out about him and stuff. Like it's more psychologically driven and character driven than a lot of his other films. But again, there is that detachment of like, I really want to get to the part where they find the thing under the fingernails.
It's like Nolan being forced to do the character driven film.
Yeah, right. But I think before he got too like full of his own powers, once he figured out like this is basically what I'm good at, I think this is a good middle ground movie where he's still trying to be a director. He's trying to insert some like cool artsy looking shots in there, but he really just wants to get to the big set pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to give that one another watch.
So yeah, that's number 88 for sure.
Cool. All right, so yeah, so we're at number 87. So for me, my number 87 is The Irishman from Martin Scorsese. Yeah,
do
The
tell.
Irishman makes my 100 list.
I've heard good things about The Irishman. Should I watch it?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about The Irishman, right? Talked
Yeah.
a lot about The Irishman. There's a lot of good things to say about The Irishman, and
Yeah.
I feel like this. I saw this thing recently where someone was trying to like kind of basically figure out like what is Martin Scorsese's style, right? And kind of the person, he found it hard to place because like you could definitely say, okay, The Departed, The Irishman,
because
Mean Streets, Goodfellas. These are all kind of similar, but then he does like Silence and what's the other one with there's another one he did, Daniel Day-Lewis. It's like a period piece, not the Civil War one. Age of Innocence. Like those are different for sure. But yeah, I feel like The Irishman is within that style, like those films, and it's like,
oh yeah,
it's like everything you kind of want.
Yeah, it's the main mode I think that he's known for being.
It's the mode, the interesting editing, the like the gangsters, the violence, the really beautiful photography, the like single take shots that are like so well choreographed, all that stuff, the sprawling epics, the voiceover narrative, the great soundtracks, all of that is there. And The Irishman has all of it. And every great actor of the generation, basically.
Basically, and he does all of the Scorsese isms are there. The soundtrack is moving you through the years. The filming the film techniques are moving you through the years. Like he shoots the older stuff in the '60s style, then as we move closer to the present, he shoots them in the different styles with different film stock and shit like that. He did that on The Aviator and Gangs of New York, and I think he did that on Gangs of New York. So like all of his like technical things are in this movie. I fucking love The Irishman.
Yeah, The Irishman is great. I really, and again, this is a movie that's been, we've been waiting for it to come out for like a decade and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and for me specifically, I just going through and discovering this filmmaker that is, top 3 filmmakers for me, going through it, all of this Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and Frank Vincent and all of these great Italian actors that he pulled in, Paul Sorvino, stuff like that. I was just like, where the fuck is Al Pacino? Where is my guy? Where is my favorite actor? And then finally we got him. That was a great moment. And there's that great, awesome moment where he knows, he knows what that reveal means, when he picks up the phone. He's like, I heard you paint houses. And you're like, oh, fuck, it's Al.
Yeah, and it's him and it's his voice. And we just hear his voice. And it's like,
yeah, it's
great. Yeah. What do you say? I paint houses and I do my own plumbing or something. Carpets,
plumbing. Yeah.
Carpets or something like that, which means that I dispose of the body as well.
Exactly. So
just so great. There's a lot of fun Al Pacino, like that scene when he meets with the other guy who's late.
Oh my god, yeah.
That scene is amazing.
It's so good.
I see that scene. Amazing.
I see that scene. Netflix put that up on their YouTube channel, and it keeps popping up, and like people's recommended, and like people who've never even seen the movie or they don't necessarily know what it's about. They comment on the scene, and they're like, "This is fucking funny."
It's so great. It's so funny, and like, yeah, he's like, "You're like, you wear that shirt to a meeting? You're late to like what? What are you doing?"
Yeah. He's like, it's I wear this all the time. It's Florida.
Yeah,
it's Florida. You wear that suit all the time. It's like for meetings, I do.
If I'm having a meeting and I come on time. It's so great. And then they talk about like, yeah, it's probably like I'm glad we're here in Florida because the weather up in New York, it's gonna be cold. It's summer.
It's it's summer.
That movie. So, and then like again, there's a great scene where the Kennedys are closing in on him, or well, Bobby is, and he's like about to get arrested, and then he brings in everybody, and then he starts cussing them out,
screams at them. Yes, it's again, it's just like what you're working with, and you just he gave us like the kind of 3-course meal of Al Pacino. We got the greats, the Teamsters are the greatest. Like we got all the screaming Pacino stuff. We got all the subtle face stuff. Like he put it all in there for us.
God, yeah. This movie is like if you don't like this movie, man.
I know a few people who don't, or rather, not that they don't like it. I just know people who are incapable of getting into it. They're basically just like, this is a boring movie for old people. And obviously, I disagree with that. And I don't think that's true in any way. But for a lot of, especially for younger people, like the Instagram generation, where everything is instant gratification all the time, and it's about clout, and it's about like, oh, well, what do I care about these old guys? They haven't done anything in the last, decade. And I've been alive in the last decade and I didn't really see anything. And so why should I care? Like, fair enough. Yeah.
How long is this movie?
Oh, it's like 3.5 hours?
Yeah, let me see. How many minutes is this movie? 209 minutes. That's long.
Yeah, that's about 3 hours, 20 minutes.
Yeah, it is a long movie. And then when we hit the ending and it takes that turn, and it's the ending is basically a purely story epilogue. Like it's giving us pure theme.
Yeah,
like it's giving us the theme, feeding us the theme, and it's just, I thought that was amazing because that's probably like half an hour, 40 minutes of the
That's
film.
what I was gonna say. I'm glad, and it's amazing that they committed to it. Everybody, like the production involved, like they let him make this length. But I'm glad that they committed to that epilogue and they gave it the time that it needed, because it really it gives you all the fun shit up front, and then it just really hits you at the end with the theme, like you said. And I'm so glad they just simmered in it for a bit.
It's so powerful. It's so powerful, and it really underscores what this film is about. That to me is the fun stuff is really, really, really good. And then when you add that on top of it, especially you talked about how this is kind of sort of the end of an era.
Yeah.
If you view The Irishman as the end of that era of mean streets, Goodfellas, Casino.
That's exactly, yeah. And
when you see this is the end for all these, they're either dead or they end up Frank
Forgotten.
Sheeran.
Yeah. Like Jimmy Hoffa. Yeah. Like with the scene with the nurse where
the nurse is like, who is that?
Who the fuck is Jimmy Hoffa? Like, okay,
Jimmy Hoffa? Jimmy
But again,
Hoffa,
it just that's what I love about it, is that it just kind of it works on all of the meta levels too. Because again, I was just talking about the 24-year-olds that I know. They don't give a fuck about Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. It's short of, oh, is that the guy from Home Alone? I didn't even recognize him because he's so fucking old. So that's to me where I think the movie succeeds the most, is it's themes, and it's meta narrative of this is it. We're not going to get money to do another one of these. We're not going to, at this scale. Maybe Marty. I mean, of course, he's in right now. He's trying to make another movie with DiCaprio and De Niro and stuff. But for that, because the mafia has been dead for a while. Sopranos has been over for 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
So
the mafia is literally dead. It's over.
So that's what kind of
is over. Yeah.
That's kind of what this movie feels like it signifies, and I'm just glad that we got one last big party with all these. Hey, Harvey Keitel shows up in this movie. I mean, all of the regulars show up, and it's great.
I mean, what's his name was retired?
Joe Pesci?
Yeah, Pesci was retired. He was done.
He was done. He was out. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Yeah. He's like, okay, don't worry. This time, you're not going to be the over-the-top murderous guy.
Oh, I'm so disappointed that that movie got a lot of Oscar nods, but it didn't win anything. And obviously, I was rooting for my guy, for Al Pacino, to get one more Oscar. But Joe Pesci in this movie is transformative.
Yeah,
he's so good.
He's amazing.
Yeah,
he's amazing. He's so amazing.
Yeah,
and it's it's just a cool thing to see, right? To see that this thing happened. Because easily it couldn't have. I mean, there was another Marty wanted to do a movie about what's his name? Frank Sinatra. It's not going to happen because the family are a bunch of Yeah, they're like, oh, Frank Sinatra never associated with the mob.
Frank Sinatra and the mafia, what? And then you watch The Sopranos, and like every episode, they're like worshiping Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. Those were the guys. They would go to Vegas, hey.
Yeah, I wonder why would he play in Vegas all those shows? Must have been a coincidence.
Vegas, what?
Yeah, it was just it didn't have anything to do with the fact that it was owned by the fucking mob.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're in denial. So that killed that movie. Unfortunately, that would have been basically like an Irishman kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, as someone who loves film history, like the Irishman is like yeah. And the guy, I forget who's the name of the writer. He's really Steven Zalian.
Yeah, Steve Zalian.
He is an absolute talent.
Yeah.
This guy is.
He's the guy he's the guy that you draft to like make your masterpieces.
He is a master. He is an absolute master of the craft.
He wrote Schindler's List, I believe, and a couple other movies. Yeah.
Yeah, The Night Of, he wrote and directed basically the whole miniseries. Very, very, very good.
Love that miniseries. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is just one of those, slam dunk on every level.
And again, it's just a miracle, and I'm glad that it happened. It's one of like 2 or 3 success stories of Netflix doing the things that. And just like doing them right, like this one and Orson Welles' last film and like Ballad of Buster Scruggs is just like, we're just going to give you money and we don't really care what it does because it's going to look good for us. And it just feels good that this got made. Yeah.
And because you saw that when they in the theater, like they did a rollout in LA. Like that was the theater they own, right? They showed it there.
Well, I saw it at the Egyptian Theater. So I don't know. I don't know.
I think they do. I think they do own the Egyptian Netflix. I believe so.
I did not know that.
I believe so. Yeah, they own a couple. They own a couple theaters in New York. They own a couple theaters in LA. I think that might be one of them. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very cool. But yeah, well, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, because I think I told you this story, but I don't know if I said it on a podcast before. But like, I was there in November when this movie came out, and they were like, yeah, next week we'll have Todd Phillips and Robert De Niro here, and they're going to talk about Joker, and they're going to be here. They're going to do like an hour-long Q&A, and then we'll watch the movie on 35 millimeter. And I was like, like I live in LA now. What's the big deal? And then, you know, a month later, coronavirus hits, and everyone, we never get to do those events.
Yeah, we don't get to do those events. Yeah, maybe ever.
Exactly.
At least I saw some speculation now. They're saying theaters should be back. So the best estimates are the end of 2021.
Yeah, right.
Is like the best estimate. Like that's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
More likely is the more conservative is 2024.
Fuck.
They said things will be. They said the box office will be back to basically 2019 in 2024.
God damn. Yeah. No, I see it. I believe it. It's wild. But
yeah,
just to put it in perspective, yeah, wow.
So yeah, I mean, getting to see this thing in theaters is like,
oh, it was incredible, yeah. And of course I've seen it a couple other times. I saw it on Netflix because that's where it is. Does not look that good to me.
That's a Criterion. They did a Criterion too.
That's coming out. That's coming out at the end of the month, and there's going to be like a extended, like they. On Netflix, they posted, because Netflix doesn't do bonus features usually, but they posted a couple things for The Irishman. They posted like a 15-minute discussion basically with Marty, De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Al Pacino about it. But it feels a little short, and so on the Criterion Blu-ray that's coming out this month, they're going to have like an extended version of that discussion, and I really am looking forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. I hope that they get everybody in there to talk about it, because this is just such a
once in a lifetime thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get Zalian in there, get everybody.
Exactly.
Whoever the producer is. Did Thelma Schumacher cut this film?
Yes, she did. Yes,
she get her in there. Yes.
Wild, absolutely wild.
Just like they got the band together, right?
They did. Yeah,
they got everybody together to make this movie.
Yeah. It feels good. It feels good when you can get one of those get the band together things.
Yeah, it's just like, why do we make movies? Why do we care about them? Right? It's to do stuff like this. Like, what else is there? What else is there to love about it?
And the only way that it got made is because this fucking tech company made $1 billion.
Yeah, because so many other people backed out. They just backed. I think Paramount backed out.
Every single studio said we're not making this, and they're not wrong, because again, so many of the people that I know are just that they're just not that interested in seeing this, and certainly not in a theater for 3.5 hours. So in a way, again, this is just the best case scenario, and I'm just glad that they got everybody in.
And by Netflix's metrics, it seems like the film did well.
I think it did, yeah.
In terms of its originals, it was in the top 10 all time.
They did a very good job marketing it, which is commendable. They did a very good job like pushing it and making sure that it's in everybody's faces, which they knew it was going to be. They knew they were going to get Oscar noms, and they knew that they could push that thing. So yeah,
they knew they had a winner on their hands, and it's
like you said, it's like ready made. Like it's like in a fucking formula bottle, and you just have to make it.
Yeah, if there is a basically like a way of calculating the degree of success for a film, and you say, okay, who's the director, who are the actors,
right,
who's the behind the scenes,
who's producing it, who's
producing it,
does he get, like, has he worked with these people before?
This thing probably gets like a score of like in the high 90s out of 100
for sure,
of like, this is gonna work out.
It's gonna be expensive, but we'll get whatever we need to get out of it.
Exactly. It's expensive, but relative to other things that aren't big IP, it's a pretty good shot. I mean, it's basically as close to that as you can get for something that's not. You get big name director, big name actors, big name in front of him, behind the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, that's without having to own fucking like Batman or whatever. Like, this is about as close as you can get.
That's true.
Like owning an IP.
It's fucking weird though, because it's like all of these guys started making movies 45, 50 years ago, and they became their own like cinematic universe. What?
I know, because it is like the like Avengers, like Marty's Avengers.
It's Marty's Avengers. A bunch of fucking old guys, making hits on people.
Yeah. I forget. I was watching something like that. There's so many. There are a lot of kind of callback-ish types. So this is what it was. I was watching Taxi Driver again a couple days ago.
Great.
And I was, one thing that kind of struck me was, like, I don't know if you remember the scene where he meets with his friend drives him and this guy, the what do they call him, the out of town salesman or some shit like that.
Oh, to get his
remember
gun.
That?
Over?
To get a gun?
Yeah.
What really struck me about that scene is, like, it's very similar to the scene in The Irishman, except he's doing the whole thing in his head instead of having the salesman tell him like what gun to get. He does the whole thing of like, well, I can't use because this is a lady's gun,
right?
But I can't use the shotgun because that's too loud. But I can use this gun because blah blah blah. And it just, I was really struck by how similar those scenes were, just in my head. Like, oh, like it's just all the self-referential stuff, like on every level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, it's always like some of the more like technical stuff, like the use of the soundtrack to move us through the period. I noticed that for the first time watching The Wolf of Wall Street in theaters, and then I went back and I watched Goodfellas, and I was like, oh, it's all there. Like, it's all there. Not that I hadn't seen Goodfellas before, but like I never picked up on some of the specific Marty things, and it's just great that it's all there for this one. Yeah,
it's awesome. I mean, I just, and it just, I don't know, it just makes me appreciate all of this stuff, like this, Casino, Goodfellas, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull. Like, all these films are just so well done, and you just like, there's a high level of the craft that they put into it. And
absolutely
has to be appreciated.
Yeah.
So that's that's my number 87, The Irishman. The much talked about on this podcast.
I look forward to talk about it again, fucking whenever. Yeah.
Oh my God. Cool. Yeah. So I think we're on your number 87.
Yeah, my number 87.
Cool.
Which is a goddamn classic, an American classic. You're talking about Bonnie and Clyde. I think the other kind of literally the other side of that is Easy Rider. And that's my number 87. And I love Easy Rider because it's one of those things. So first of all, I love Dennis Hopper so much for all of his mania and all of his just unbridled insanity that goes into everything that he makes. This just feels like a bunch of guys, and it is. If you read about how it was made, it's just a bunch of guys fucking around. They had some money to make a movie. They got this incredible cinematographer, I believe Laszlo, I forget his last name, Hungarian cinematographer, I think, who ended up shooting a lot of new Hollywood movies, what they call the New Hollywood. But like, again, for 1969, you had Bonnie and Clyde with the violence, and then you had Easy Rider with everything else, with the language, the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
There's some
psychedelic
in there,
stuff.
Psychedelics. Yeah, Jack Nicholson is in this movie.
Yeah, he is.
Has absolutely one of the greatest like ad-libbed acid trip monologues of all time. It's just worth seeing for all of those reasons, and I just love it because again, I like movies that I missed growing up. I missed the kind of romantic movies of Hollywood, like the romantic era, the Gone with the Winds and stuff. I still love those pictures, but they didn't affect me because I discovered them after stuff like Easy Rider and stuff like that. So like they're very, very different. They're very theatrical and operatic and well produced, and Easy Rider is very sloppy and all over the place. And there's the scene at the end where they shot out of a helicopter and it's just like the shittiest looking thing ever, but they got a helicopter, so goddamn it, put a camera in it. Just like really DIY stuff in Easy Rider that I really, really, really like. And it makes you feel like it's one of those movies that they show in film school, but it really does make you feel that like you and your buddy can pick up a camera. Granted, your buddy has to be Peter Fonda, son of Henry Fonda, but like you and your buddy can pick up a camera and go on a road trip and just make a movie. And it had such an impact because it was just the culture at the time. It was just time, we had all of these code approved movies that were coming out, and then Easy Rider comes out and is just like, no, well, yeah, but this is actually what we're doing. This is actually what young people are into. It's smoking weed and driving bikes and, having sex with girls. Like, wild concept. I know. It's like, imagine if every generation did that. But like we got to see that on the big screen, and it was like the biggest grossing movie of all fucking time when it came out. So yeah, but it's still worth watching, I believe. And it's on my list for all of those reasons. I love that this movie went out there and it just basically showed everybody like, hey, it's like a day in the life, but for hippies. And it's really cool. And the soundtrack in it, you got Steppenwolf and all this stuff is so iconic and so great. And I believe, again, like Bonnie and Clyde, if Easy Rider doesn't get made, we don't get all of the great, the stuff that we like, a lot of the 70s, 80s stuff. Like it just doesn't happen.
We would still get like Jaws and probably Star Wars, but we don't get like, like Godfather.
We don't get Oliver Stone. We don't necessarily get Brian De Palma. We don't get some of these just like out of left field kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, stuff like Carrie, right? Like stuff like
right. Yeah. Just like, oh, we can do this now. We can show you dicks. We'll show you dicks. Yeah, we can do this, and it's popular. This is what they want. This is what people that age want. Exactly. And it makes me seem like I just like ignored European films at the same time, because like European films have been doing this forever. Like it's not just about Hollywood and the system, but it's a moment where this stuff came to Hollywood and then people paid for it, and then Hollywood adapted and they were like, I guess we can say fuck now, and then we ditched the code, which is great. Or at least the rating system, kind of gets born out of it.
Yeah. The other thing too about this film is the biking culture in America had not been really depicted. Mm-hmm. I feel like very well until this film, mm-hmm. or at least not like I think of like stuff like Tenet Danger that comes to my mind.
I think of like that Marlon Brando movie. Cool. What is it? The Wild One. That's another one.
Yeah, but there's something about like there's a saying, America's an open road, and I feel like this film lives
very
that.
True. Very true, because it's different from every other fucking country, or at least every other country that makes these types of movies, where it's so sprawling and it's mostly just dead space. So you just go, and you can have all these. I mean, there's so many great road trip movies, and this is like kind of the original, like the road trip movie with with some zing in it, some kind of spiciness thrown in.
Yeah. So it's like, instead of what it happened one night and there's some, the silly screwball comedy, this is like drugs and
Drugs, yeah, like all the
fights.
bizarro, all the weirdos and freaks that you encounter along the way. Yeah,
Yeah. It's a great film, and it's again, yeah, like it is a trailblazer of its era.
for sure. Like this is one of those movies that I just love. I just love having it on in the background. I feel like as disconnected by time and culture and space and time and all of this stuff that I am from the time period and from these guys, but like, it just feels good to hang out with these guys. And Peter Fonda passed away last year. That was a great sadness because I love Peter Fonda, and of course Dennis Hopper was an even greater sadness for me, especially once we get further down the list. Dennis Hopper is going to keep creeping up, quite literally. So yeah, I just love this movie.
Yeah, those guys were like, and that's what's so cool about this era too, right? Because like you were talking about what was it, the Rain people, and like how there's just basically these great actors it just in the movie,
right,
doing these bit parts or whatever, because that's just kind of what happened at the time.
yeah
And like, you know, and this is the same thing. It's like Jack Nicholson, the great Jack Nicholson, just shows up in this drug stoner road movie.
But he shows up because, you know, they're part of the same. They know the same people. They're part of the same, you know, entourage. Basically, like they do this stuff off screen as well as they do it on screen. You know, and so it's just awesome that out of, you know, they finally got together, and the movies became, I believe, it just became more like they saw the European stuff going on, and they figured out like handheld cameras exist. If they can do it, like why the fuck can't we do it on a budget, you know? And they did stuff like this, and people saw it, and they were like, go figure. Jack Nicholson's an interesting character. Let's put him in movies. Like, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I feel like this was a time period that's really so interesting because it was just anything kind of goes, you know? Because like it's just a grab bag. It's like, yeah, let's take this European stuff. Let's like me and my friend, we're gonna just like get some bikes. We're gonna go down. Yeah, you know, I was like, we talked about Five Easy Pieces, the Rain people. It's just like it's almost like, and you know, even Bonnie and Clyde, right? It's like all these movies. It's like, what is Hollywood gonna be? And then just like all these ideas descended.
They all just kind of hit at once. Yeah.
They all just like, and then at the end of it, we're like, well, blockbusters or whatever. Plus, like the, you know, I mean, The Godfather is a blockbuster, but that is a
very arty film. Yeah.
Very arty, very violent, very different than what would be the blockbuster of the previous era. You know, like the Ben-Hurs and like the big epics. You know,
right. The fucking Lawrence of Arabia's. Yeah.
That late '60s grab bag is like, it's a very fun.
I love it. Yeah, it's one of my absolute favorite periods in movies, especially in Hollywood movies, American movies, because again, they just finally opened up. Like I feel like Hollywood has just been like holding back, and they've just been like edging this entire time. I'm like, no, we can't show a kiss for more than 4 seconds. Think of the children, and then finally, it just all of it explodes in violence and sex and drugs, and it's all out there. Yeah, it's some great stuff. Hal Ashby, another one of the guys. Hal Ashby is one of the great filmmakers. Yeah,
Hal Ashby. Oh my god, like the stuff he made. Whew. Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I guess now we're on number 86.
I believe so.
So my number 86 is a Fellini movie.
Hey.
There'll be a couple of Fellini movies on my list. So this one is
Federico.
Federico Fellini, Knights of Cabiria. So Knights of Cabiria is about what we find out is basically she's a prostitute, and she's trying to make her way in this world. She's just looking for love, right? She's kind of she's looking for love and in all the wrong places, you know. And she's
I've heard that tagline before. She's just looking for love.
And you know the problem for her is like, you know, no one wants to commit to her. Basically. And yeah, it's a really interesting film. It's a very tragic film. It's a very kind of sorrowful film and kind of sad, but it's very beautiful and heartfelt and kind of warm, and it has a very, very beautiful ending. Where like the character, you know, basically she's like, she tries to find love a bunch of times, and she just gets screwed over again and again and again and again. And then she's almost kind of done with it, and then she just has this cathartic moment that happens spontaneously. and it kind of lifts your spirits. And it's kind of one of those moments that, you know, I think everyone has those moments where you're just like, you feel like shit, and then like, you know, something happens. Like, you know, I feel like people that own a dog or a cat, like you feel bad, and then your dog like jumps on your lap or whatever. And you're just like, oh, right. I'm not sad.
And you're like, maybe there is a light at the end of the
yeah. I feel like this movie is like the ending is like the dog jumped on the lap, and you're just like, you know, you get this strong kind of score at the end, and you're just like, you get emotional. You're like, yeah, life's not that bad, even though it sucks.
That's great.
Yeah, that's how I would put Knights of Cabiria. It's a beautiful film. It's really wonderful. And cool. You know, yeah, this is like the hooker with a heart of gold story from the hooker's perspective, I guess is the way I put it.
Mm-hmm. That's what it seems like, yeah.
Yeah, because usually it's, you know, pretty women. I'm not sure if she's the protagonist or not. She might be, but I feel like there's a lot of the dude in that.
Well,
movie.
it's about like because ultimately the hooker with the heart of gold thing usually ends up being like a fairy tale kind of an ending, like a Cinderella thing of like,
yes,
she just has to meet the right guy who pulls her out of her whatever, you know, her depths of whatever she's in. This sounds more like it's the character just realizing on their own, you know, kind of what their problems are.
Yeah, she never. I feel like the thematic story for the character is like realizing that, you know, she's enough for herself. She's not going to find a person who's going to complete her.
That's great. Yeah, that you don't hear that many stories, at least not in the Hollywood machine.
Yeah.
Back then in 57, Jesus Christ, women, no.
yeah, and especially like, you know, the hooker as protagonist. How many of those do we get?
Yeah.
You know, especially when it's not like, because this movie, it's not like, oh yeah, she stopped being a hooker and then she was good and then life was good.
Right.
It's like, no, she doesn't really. That doesn't really. It's not like at the end of the film, oh yeah, she's now, you know, a typist or something. No, she's still the same. She's just happy with herself.
That's great. That's all. That's like the European perspective, I guess, on that, as opposed to just everything needs to fit in these boxes and you can't do that because that's bad, and you know, God will smite you or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you know, the church does exist, but I feel like, especially in European films at the time, it seems to me like they were a lot more open to exploring the kind of just the stuff that people did. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's definitely one I would recommend. And yeah, I mean, I think he's a great filmmaker. Fellini is a great filmmaker. I don't like all of his films. There's some that I need to, like 8.5 and La Dolce Vita, and a couple other ones I need to rewatch because I watched them at a time, and I don't know, they just didn't sit well enough with me.
Sure.
And I expect if I watch it again with more perspective, I think I'll feel differently about it.
Yeah.
But this was a film, even at the time when I probably saw this a long time ago when I first saw it, but it really impacted me strongly. And I was like, yeah, this is a powerful film, beautiful film.
Yeah, Fellini is definitely one of those filmmakers that is like more or less, especially if you attend any kind of like film school or film studies, like he's more or less shoved down your throat. Like, here's the greats. This is one of the greats, and these are the films that you need to watch.
Yeah,
and you know, here's 8.5.
Eat your supper.
Exactly. And if you're not in the right headspace or the right mood or whatever, you know, and you're just watching these things, or you know, you're having a bad day or something, then I can totally see how like it doesn't hit for you. So like, definitely like rewatching some of the movies for some of the other filmmakers like has been a surprise for me. I'm just like, I like this a lot more than I thought I did. Like Citizen Kane is one of those that like I saw it the first time, and because it had been, I saw it in like 2012, I think, and that's when they were talking about like the greatest films of all time, Citizen Kane, and then I was like, it's pretty good. Yeah, but then, you know, you rewatch it and you gain more context, and you start to appreciate things about it personally. And I feel like, yeah, it's hard with some of these great filmmakers, but this to me sounds like something I would really, really like. So I'm adding it to my list for sure. Yeah,
Kane is definitely one that's, I feel the same way about The Irishman. I feel like for a lot of people, The Irishman is a film. I bet you there are people that imagine like someone like you. Oh, here's a scenario I think that would help with The Irishman. Like you have a kid and your kid goes off to college and then you watch The Irishman.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because it's like, yeah, that's
gonna hit you.
it hits differently. It's going to hit you differently then than it would if you're a 25-year-old and you're out on the street.
Oh, 100%.
And you're just like, I'm invincible, you know?
Yeah. You watch Easy Rider when you're 25.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, dude, I want to get a bike and smoke weed and go from California to, New York.
Yeah.
And just bum it and see what it's like. See America.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because like especially Kane, I feel like there's a lot of I feel like the stuff with the media too in that film is actually really
yeah. I mean, we'll get to it.
Prescient. Yeah.
We'll get to it. Trust me. We'll get to it.
So yeah, that's my number 86, Nights of Cabiria. From
Federico. Very cool. My number 86 is a San Francisco movie, and it's one of the great San Francisco movies. And I didn't really realize how much I love San Francisco movies until I moved to San Francisco, and I lived there for a couple of years. That city, like you said, is so goddamn cinematic. Like
the hills,
the fact that it's like basically just a rock surrounded by like other rocks and like a coast. And there is like a rock that happens to be a prison nearby. Like that's and the only thing connecting in and out of this thing are like highways, basically. Like this thing's isolated. It's very like you could do so much in San Francisco. And this is one of the great films. I saw this when I was a kid in Romania, and I had no concept of what 70s movies were. But this movie, like just the setting of it and some of the establishing shots that they use, it made me feel like, oh, this doesn't feel like all of the other American movies that I've seen, even though it's very much the same kind of plot. Number 86 is Dirty Harry. I love Dirty Harry, and I was, if nothing else, I had to get a Don Siegel movie on here. So Dirty Harry is basically the one. It opens up. Everybody knows that iconic scene with he's in the diner, and then these guys come in. There's a car that crashes through a fire hydrant, and he chases down the perps, whatever. There's all that in the movie, but really, so it's about Detective Harry Callahan and not the Zodiac Killer, Jesus, but basically it's basically that, right?
It's the Zodiac
Scorpio.
Killer. It's the Zodiac Killer.
It's the Zodiac Killer. So it's a San Francisco movie through and through because of those reasons. Clint Eastwood, of course, well known for his love of the West Coast of California.
He's a San Francisco guy, basically.
He's a San Francisco guy, basically, yeah. And this movie just hits. It's because Dirty Harry is one of those movies that spawns. Everybody knows the one-liners, and everybody knows like the no fucks given, the shit kicking character of Harry Callahan and Clint Eastwood. Right, by extension. And this is, of course, his first movie where he breaks out of those westerns that he'd been making with Sergio Leone, and he basically has just been making westerns. And for the Hollywood studios, he did a fucking musical western, right? To Paint Your Wagon or whatever. That thing's a disaster. But I'm big Clint Eastwood fan. But this is the one where like he gets to play something else, and he kind of really falls into it, like the no fucks given, the hard-boiled detective with nothing to lose or whatever. So this spawns a lot of shittier movies, but I feel like Dirty Harry on its own is a very, very well-made film. The sequels are whatever. You can say, like the sequels are good. They're all set in San Francisco. They all look the part. But this one feels more like an honest kind of film as opposed to just trying to repeat those tropes of those characters and those types of things. And for that reason, like I really like, and again, I love the work that Don Siegel did with Clint Eastwood. He's like one of his main mentors, basically, Don Siegel. They made Escape from Alcatraz and a couple other movies together. But this is the one, again, like where the Clint Eastwood character, like the archetype kind of comes into being, and then it gets ripped off and it gets diluted through the years, I feel like. But Dirty Harry like stands on its own. He's no nonsense, he's a tough cop, whatever. He's got a very strict set of morals. He's got like a moral code that he operates by, which I think is really interesting for this type of guy. Like he calls out people on like racist shit, sexist shit. Like he calls them out in these movies. and I like that about him, because he could just be like a Charlie Bronson where it's really, really low rent and he just goes around shooting people because that's the movie. But it's a little more intelligent than that. And the cinematography, like the cityscapes and the like that I forget exactly the locations, but like all of the locations they shoot in this movie, there's that great scene with the bus where Scorpio hijacks a bus full of school children, and it's like this intense kind of like race against the clock to get them. It's really well made, really really smart thriller. Probably the first of its kind of like a smart thriller. Again, this is 71, I think. So this is right where the studios were like, fuck it, we're gonna do it. We're gonna show blood and tits, and we're gonna have a tough guy shooting people in the head, and that's fine. And it feels good. It feels so good, and it's a smart movie, and it holds up, I believe, wholeheartedly. I love Dirty Harry. Yeah,
Dirty Harry is a good one, especially for the time period. It just like it had the fact that it was about basically the Zodiac Killer. They renamed him, but it's about the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah,
takes place in San Francisco. You got this guy who's this. It's almost like it came out of the ether because,
right,
like the Zodiac Killer had a profound effect on people in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
I mean, people were fucking scared. People were scared, and it's almost like, the only person who can get the Zodiac Killer is this psycho. We need to hire this psycho.
It takes a psycho to catch a psycho. I mean, how many times have you seen that in movies since? Right.
What's the Lethal Weapon?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Many others. Yeah.
And it's one of those roles where I was on another podcast and we had discussions about this, are there certain roles where you can't have anyone else in the role? I feel like this is one where I don't know if there's really anyone else that really worked. Does Charles Bronson really work?
It would be a different movie. Yeah. Clint has a very specific kind of attitude. Yeah.
Or like, who else would be up for this? Like Tom Selleck, something like that.
Well, I think they wanted Steve McQueen, if I remember correctly.
Steve McQueen, yeah.
Sure, but he's a little too cool.
Steve McQueen. So like, I don't know if we're going to talk about Bullet, but Bullet is one I feel is a little analogous to this.
It is.
But the difference in Bullet is like he's very cold in that movie. Very cold. And it's almost like he doesn't care. It's almost like, I feel like the Clint Eastwood stuff is like he wants to get the guy.
Oh, he's maniacal about it. Yeah. He's pissing off everyone along the way. Yeah.
To get the job done.
Exactly.
I feel like this is one of those, like, you could have someone else in the role, but it wouldn't work as well.
Exactly. Like you could have someone else in the role and it would still be a good movie, but I feel like it would just be forgotten. Like there's just something about like you said, from the ether and what became is just, you see a Dirty Harry poster or at least a Clint Eastwood poster with a fucking Magnum in his hand in every college dorm across the country. Like right now, every fucking 20-year-old's got a Clint Eastwood poster still. So yeah, there's something about it that just really, really worked. And again, it was the relationship between these guys, the director Don Siegel and Clint Eastwood. Like they really wanted to make something new and special.
Yeah,
and they did. Yeah.
It's a great one. Especially like in the Lucian, it's a very Lucian film.
It is. Yeah.
It's a very Lucian kind of film. Yeah. It's got all these great elements to it.
It's got everything. All I really, really want is dirty characters, some dirty alleyways. Like I need at least one or two dirty alleyways. I need someone to bleed out, be shot and killed. I need like some elements of psychological stuff. I'm good. That's what I want out of my movies. Yeah.
Cool. Good stuff. All right. So I think we're at number 85. So for me, my number 85 is a Christopher Nolan movie, Interstellar. So, yeah. Although this one doesn't have the blah.
No,
this one has. I think we talked about it before, but Hans Zimmer is definitely doing a Philip Glass in this. In this film. It is straight up Philip Glass and and it's great. It is a beautiful, beautiful, haunting score.
Hans Zimmer is the emotional, like the score is what injects the emotion in this movie more than anything else. You can have people crying on screen, that's great, but the score is what really fucking sells it.
I think there is the one scene when he gets back from the mission that failed and he sees his family growing up, and he just can't, he's missed it. I think that works, and I almost think that's like the best, most emotional scene he's ever done.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. I think so too. And I think even if you just zoom out a little bit and just say like, this is the most emotional film he's ever done, probably.
Yeah. Probably. I mean, again, Nolan, he doesn't really emotions.
It's about family.
You've seen Tenet, right? Let's just I just want to just give a contrast so that we can understand, like, I think why Interstellar is a really, really great film to me, and like why contrasting with Tenet, because he's approaching these things the same way, but one doesn't work, and I think one does work pretty well.
Yeah.
So in Tenet, the main character is called the protagonist. Doesn't have a name.
Yeah. He's like in a video game. He's the guy that you play that doesn't have like a voiceover, that is just a vessel for the player to like learn about the world and like do the things, but everybody's speaking at you and giving you the exposition. That's the vibe I got from Tenet. Yeah.
And so there's this character. So how can we connect with this character? We don't know his name. He's called the protagonist.
Well, you don't know his name because there's a plot twist.
And I don't know, like Tenet to me feels like a completely plot-driven, calculated, methodical kind of film. And it, like, a lot of the stuff work. It's like the ideas are crazy. They're really cool. But you feel nothing.
It's like the clock. It's like the clock. The guy. What do you call like the guys that work on clocks? Basically, it's like the fucking clock master, just making the most insane schematic. He's got like his Leonardo da Vinci fucking symmetrical things out, and he's just like plotting everything along the way. Yeah, that's Tenet to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a good analogy. He's a clockmaker. He's made this super articulate clock that has all these different, I forget if there's a name for it, but like the different things that a clock can do, like if it has different times and whatever. It has all this stuff, but I'm looking at this thing and I feel nothing from it. I feel nothing. I'm just like, well, that's a nice clock.
That's a nice clock. It is beyond my abilities even to comprehend how nice of a clock it is. I just recognize that it's really nice.
Tenet has basically no emotional core. He attempts to do one with one of the side characters.
Oh God, fucking yeah, he tries.
And it's not even the main character. So like in this film, at least the protagonist, Cooper, he is the central, emotional core of the film.
Yeah.
It's him.
All right.
It's the fact that he has to leave his daughter, and then he regrets it, and then he finds out that he was betrayed by this organization, by NASA, by Dr. Brand, just basically lied to him and said, yeah, you're going off on a mission and you have no chance to ever see your daughter again. You won't. Sorry. I didn't tell you that because I needed to lie to get people to do this thing for us, because I think that's the only way to save humanity. And if he knew that, he would have never gone on this whole crazy mission in the first place.
Right.
And that, that can connect with people. That actually makes you like, okay, I'm seeing. And again, I love the space stuff in this. It is so beautiful. Sure. It is so, so beautiful. Like the shots of space, and they go past Saturn in the Endurance. It's amazing. Yeah. There's a scene where they go into the wormhole like that. And just when they see the wormhole, like, it's unbelievable. And the scenes when they see Gargantua, the supermassive black hole, it's absolutely some of the best science fiction ever put on film ever.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely. If his mission, I believe, from like a like filmmaking standpoint, one of his missions was to just do as much 2001 as he could, right? Make it all practical, and he fucking nailed it. I can't think of another movie since 2001 that like went as hands-on with this types of stuff, and he shot it all on IMAX, and it looks incredible. Yeah.
On this level, I don't think there's anything. I think, something similar would be like Gravity, but Gravity is not like Interstellar or 2001.
No, Gravity is trying to do something else entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just trying to be a small story that, uses sort of like the one take kind of thing.
Trickery, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like a very highly technical, precise filmmaking. But this is like massive scale, big ideas, big,
big ideas, big sets, big movements, big. Again, there's a little bit of that clock work in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but this one, to me, there's more there than just the clock.
There is, but I do have to say though, everybody that I spoke with, especially like younger people, like because when I went to San Francisco State, I was a lot older than like my roommates and a lot of other people, and they'd seen Interstellar. Obviously, it was a big pop product that they consumed. And everybody across the board just makes fun of the Murph. Don't leave me, Murph. So like there is an element to even the most honest like family character driven story that he's probably ever told. There's an element of it that gets memed out of existence because of how hard he hits you over the head with it at the end. And you know, he's just like, you will care about this. Yeah. And like I agree with you. I think it's a relatable and it's a good story and it's a great device. But I feel like ultimately what the idea for this movie was, okay, so relativity, right? How do I make relativity like relevant to audiences? Well, what if the character travels through time in totally legit physics ways, and we'll show them how that works, but like he misses out on his family or some shit like that. Like I feel like they approached it from a more mechanical way of like relativity is really fucking cool. How do we put that in a movie? Also, how do we make that like emotionally relevant or whatever? And that's kind of what the story they came up with. I don't know if that's true, but that's just what it seems like to me.
You can tell that he like that's not his thing. The emotional, like creating the emotional thing in the film, that's not what he cares about.
Right. It just feels like that wasn't the starting point. Whereas in some other movies, it always starts with a character or a conflict or whatever. His starting point was like physics, space, Kubrick. And then they came around to a really cool, relatable story about how, you know, you age when you're this far away and whatever. But yeah, I think he should keep trying at it because I think he can get there. I believe, like I said, Insomnia. I think he's very close to getting it when he's not just bogged down by the big ideas that he has. Which is like counterintuitive, but that's what it seems like.
Yeah, because he's just so obsessed with making the clock, right?
And making sure every fucking good at it too.
Every like instrument, you know,
like Dunkirk. You said like that 4K print of or like transfer of Dunkirk is incredible.
It's unbelievable. It almost completely changed my view of the film. Like at first, I was like, yeah, it's cool. It's cool. This is nice.
Did you get to see that one? Did you see that one in IMAX or whatever when it came out?
I don't think I saw it in IMAX at the time. If it came out now, I would have seen it in IMAX. But at the time, I probably saw it just in like a 35 millimeter.
Okay, I saw Dunkirk on 65, and it was like unfuckwithable. Like it blew me away. That was like it. That was it. That was one of those things where just like all right, like fuck, like what more do you want? I get it. Like you're unfuckwithable. You're the guy who's gonna build the clock. Like Jesus, dude, calm down.
Yeah, even Dunkirk, I feel like is a little bit more. He does like again. That's a human conflict story, right? And I think that he does the human conflict, because it's a war. I think he even does that kind of well there too. Even though again he's got the time fetish, and so he's like, how can I? Oh yes. So if you're a soldier, your time is different than if you're on a boat than if you're on a plane. Oh
yeah.
That's what he was into. That was what he cared. Again, that's what he cares about, right?
Exactly. It feels to me like he's researching these topics and he finds the thing. He sees like, oh, they counted time differently. Ooh, you know, or like Interstellar is like time works differently when you're in space. Ooh, where instead of just being like, I want to write a story about a dad and his daughter.
If time goes backwards, ooh, you know?
Yeah, but like it's all connected.
Yeah, yeah. But like Tenet, it's so bad. It is so bad the way he tries to shoehorn in. Like, there's a scene where like, what's his name is Neil. The Neil character is explaining like how basically how the MacGuffin's going to end the world. And then he's like, yeah, it's going to end the world. And she's like, oh, and it'll kill my son.
Yeah, I remember.
No. It's going to end the world. That includes your son and the world. The world. And it's just like, why? Why do you need to try to do that?
But if we don't have her and her son, what else do we have?
We have the protagonist and Twilight Boy and the 6'5" woman.
The protagonist's only conflict in that movie is trying to help her out and her son. Yeah,
dude, and it's like, why does he want to help her?
That's never really explained.
It's kind of it's never explained, and
there's not even like a callback to like a memory that he has of like when he was a child, like some kind of device. There's not even any of that.
Not only is it not explained, but it's brought up at the end of the film. Like the last thing Neil asks him is like, "Are you going to help her?" And he says no, which is again that's something that they do establish, which is that the first thing of Tenet is always lie.
Right.
Do not tell the truth because withholding information is power.
Yeah.
So he lies to him, but he's gonna do it. But what does that mean? I don't know. I don't know why he wants to help her. I don't know. There's no emotion, right? There's no emotional like connection made about why he wants to do this thing.
Yeah. No, but you're right. And I think we've agreed on this. Like Interstellar is for sure the one that is probably hits the closest, but I still think they stumbled upon it. They didn't start with I'm going to write a daddy-daughter story. They started with relativity. But it works probably the best out of most of his films.
Yeah, I think he always starts with the big clock, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, so first thing he does is, okay, I'm going to create all the pieces for this clock and all of the different iterations. Okay, so now how do I then create the emotional iteration that works within this clock?
Right.
And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's a disaster. Sometimes it's, above average.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's a plot guy.
Yeah.
He's a plot guy, but he does it really well.
Yeah.
Does it really well. That's why he's a great. But you know, it's definitely a weakness in his game.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the sound design, but can't be perfect.
Yeah. I love that headline where that came out that I sent you. It was just like he's had directors call him that were just like, why? What the fuck? Like your sound, I forget exactly what it was. It's just like your sound is like we're disgusted by this.
Yeah. What's funny too about it, he obviously doesn't care. He just doesn't care. That's just a thing for him. He's like, don't listen because I just want you to consume the plot, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
And he also, I guess he thinks like it's more natural if two people are on a boat and you can't hear them. It's like, yeah, well, that's how life is. You're not going to hear two people on a boat talking.
Sure.
Just enjoy the enjoy the IMAX image.
Yeah. I think because I think there's a level of like he wants you to keep digging and keep discovering and figuring it out like over repeat viewings, which is fine. But I think a shitty way to do it is to just withhold information up front.
And like Tenet is such a perfect example of that because there is so much plot.
Yeah.
There's like that scene on the boat which you can't hear. I don't know if the plot is really important, but it does sort of explain something that
it does. No, it totally does. I saw it like a couple months after you did, and like I could kind of hear what they were saying because you said they like fixed that, and it was really important stuff, but it was very, very hard to hear. Yeah, and I mean they're like that. Tenet is such a perfect example of like an overly plot-driven film. And that just makes it so much worse because like there's so many moments. Like there's a moment later on where, and it's like I feel like you would never pick it up on the first try, where he leaves a microphone in a box, and then he records the villain saying something, and then he hears it, and then he plays it back like twice in the film. Yeah, and that actually is an important plot point for like what happens later. But at that point you're just like, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what's going on. I couldn't even hear it. Yeah, I couldn't understand what. Yeah, exactly. You won't even hear it, and it's like, dude, there's so much plot. It's just like plot, and it's just like, dude, you're lost halfway through. Like I don't know where I'm at anymore. Yeah. But yeah, let's fly another 747 into something like so I can get back up to speed. Yeah. Oh, but it's cool. I like Interstellar a lot too. Yeah. So yeah, it's Interstellar. I just love like the fact that he used
his ability as an A-list director to try and make this type of high sci-fi, like not like the fantasy Star Wars kind of stuff.
Yeah,
This
like
is
he gets really into the details, into the like minutia of it. Yeah.
This is like trying to do something that could happen in real life as close as you can, while also like making a film that is narratively satisfying. And that's just like,
well,
again,
it's satisfying until the very end where he just like, cool, I made it. I gotta go find what's her face on another planet. Peace out, bitches. Like that. Really, his
daughter tells him to do it.
Yeah,
she tells him to go. That whole scene could have been.
There's a lot of preamble of him crying for 2 hours, and then he just kind of like ends. I don't know, but again, it's all part of the way that you know.
So for me, I don't really care about that. Like, it's definitely a flaw.
Yeah,
but like I'm not in it for,
Oh no. But I'm just saying, like, if we're critiquing specifically the story,
of course. But we're always gonna know going into a Nolan film that the characters are gonna be hella flat.
Yeah.
Like the characters are flat, like flat as a pancake. But you're gonna get some strong plot and some very well thought out plot points. Like the way that he is going to give you the story is going to be masterful. Always masterful. And like, he's been over it and over it again and again and again. Like in Tenet, the plot is great, actually. Like when you understand all the ideas.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And like, he's so good at taking these big ideas like Inception and all the stuff in Interstellar. Like, these are big ideas and like making them consumable for people in a narrative.
Yes. That is a skill. No, that is a skill for sure.
Yeah. But yeah,
and especially using the film language, like you gotta know what you're doing for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, Interstellar. I think this is the first Nolan film on my list. So that's at my number 85.
Yeah, I think you got Interstellar, I got Insomnia. We got Nolan on the board.
Yeah, Nolan's on the board.
Yeah,
as is Don Siegel.
Yes, I'm so happy.
All right, cool. Yeah, so what's your number 85?
Number 85 is Kevin Smith's Dogma.
Oh, yeah.
I really, really love this movie. This is one of those movies. Okay, so a little bit of background. My family, super, super, super religious. Very, very religious background. This movie basically sets out to not necessarily lampoon, but like really just poke hard at all of the tenets, no pun intended, and all of the things of about Catholicism, right? Because Kevin Smith grew up Catholic, and this is just him kind of like, again, not necessarily making fun of it, but just kind of really, really, really just poking at it and taking the piss out of the whole thing, and just pointing out how kind of absurd some of the stuff is. But I think he does it in a really tasteful way. I mean, it's very okay. So it is very sacrilegious if you come at it from like a super purist point of view. For example, my family grew up, whatever. I grew up Pentecostal Christian. And so my family is still and very much is Pentecostal Christian. And it's not anything like Catholicism, but there's, Jesus and some of those things. Like, they're just not, you don't mess with that stuff. And then we picked up this movie from Hollywood Video. Again, the only one that existed in Romania at the time. Popped it in. And in the first couple minutes of the movie, Alan Rickman shows up. He's like, yeah, I'm an angel. And then they start talking about dicks. And then and then in the restaurant, Alan Rickman drops his pants and he's like, no, like, we don't have the God fucking hates us because he didn't give us genitals. And then he pulls down his pants and he's just like this dickless angel in the middle of the cafeteria, or sorry, the restaurant. And then my parents just turned it off immediately. They were like, this is filth. This is trash. We are not watching the rest of this. And of course, the first thing I did is I tried to find a way to watch the rest of the movie. And I did, and it was awesome. And I kept rewatching it. And every time I rewatch it, it's actually like it's like smarter every time, because some of the dialogue scenes that they have between so Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, which this is kind of like an Irishman situation, that it's working on so many different levels, because he meta narratively, like, you got Affleck and Damon, and they basically are created because Kevin Smith gives the Good Will Hunting script to Harvey Weinstein or whatever. So he gets them in this movie, and they have they're both fallen angels, and they have all of these great, like genuinely interesting, like religious and philosophical debates while they're like killing people in this movie. And it's like it's a road movie. It's got Jay and Silent Bob in it. It's got a really, really great, like the main kind of protagonist of this movie. I forget what her name is in the movie. Linda Fiorentino's character. She has this, like, she's a Catholic, and she has this struggle inside of her because she's trying to. It's something about abortion. I don't remember exactly, but like, there's just a lot of religious conflict in this movie, and they're all like, they come across as sincere. And again, he's not like making fun of it necessarily, but he is making fun of it, and everything just kind of comes to a head. And there's like a whole end of the world thing, and you got, you know, your Buddy Christ meme, and you've got the angels of death, you know, are coming, and they have this like religious war at the end. And I feel like this is probably the best, most realized Kevin Smith movie out of all of them. You could argue Chasing Amy, but that's like still on a smaller indie level. This has kind of got a little more of the budget. It's got a lot of really great names in it. It's very funny. It's got a lot going on. It's a road movie about these stoners who are escorting this woman, and she is like the chosen one to save the world from ending or whatever. And then there's these two fallen angels that are trying to bring about the end of the world and killing everyone along the way. But it's all in the dialogue. Like, Kevin Smith movies are, for me, all about dialogue, and it's so smartly written because it doesn't outright come out and say, you're wrong, you're stupid for believing in this stuff. It just kind of plays out that way. And I think that's really smart, but I can totally see how this offends a lot of people, especially fundamentalists. But really, it pokes fun at fundamentalists more than, like, I feel like even a Christian with an open mind can see this movie and find something funny about it. Like the Golgothan, the shit monster. You know, there's like an offhanded comment of like, yeah, you know, like when people died on the cross, like obviously, you know, their bowels were evacuated, and so they rolled down the mountain, and then there's a shit demon. You know, like. You can make that make sense, and he does, and it's very funny, and I fucking love Dogma, and that's why it's on my list.
Yeah, I think I really like that film too. It's really fun. It's very funny. He's got this, like, you know, we think of Tarantino as like a dialogue master, but he's very good at writing. Very good. He's very good. Like, I think, isn't the opening scene Matt Damon talking a nun out of being religious?
Yeah.
That scene is really good.
No,
because that's some real, like, philosophy of religion there.
Yeah,
he plays it for laughs. But it's a real, like, kind of Socratic debate in a way.
Yeah, but that's the whole movie, especially the Damon and the Affleck characters. That's the whole movie. Like, they're genuine, like, exercises, like philosophical exercises that they work through in the context of this wacky, crazy, insane comedy. And I love that because he doesn't really do that in any of the other movies. For most of the time, they're just like non sequiturs, or they're like dick jokes, or, you know, 37 dicks. I'm number 37. Like, that stuff is great.
Or but arguments about like Lord of the Rings versus Star Wars.
Exactly.
You know?
But this feels like it comes from, like, he's working this stuff out for himself. Like, he's got all these conflicting points of views, and he's making these characters say these things. And it's just like in a really, really funny context. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, he does a really good job of like making you think about all kinds of stuff. I remember there's one. There's like that fast food chain, like a movie.
The movies, yeah.
Yeah, movies. Don't they do a massacre at a movie place or something? I believe that they do a massacre there because it's like they say, oh well, this is
the angels, yeah.
The angels, yeah. They're like, this is sacrilege.
It's the boardroom for movies, right? Yeah. And Matt Damon has an incredible basically a monologue where he talks to these corporate executives, and he just breaks down level by level why the corporate are more evil than them, you know. And so they're like, fucking, you all should die and burn in hell, you know?
Like, there's just so many levels of this film. And Chris Rock's in the film, right? Mm-hmm. He's like the apostle, or
he's the apostle.
Something.
He's the apostle that they didn't write about because he was black.
Yeah, just like so funny. It's like, dude, this is so funny. Yeah. Plus, you know, you got Jay and Silent Bob, and is it God is? Oh, who plays God in this movie?
Alanis Morissette.
Alanis Morissette. Yeah. It's amazing. It's just like so funny.
And George Carlin's in this movie.
George Carlin's in this movie.
Really funny people.
He gets killed by someone, right? At some point.
I think so. Yeah, he plays he's like the head of the Catholic Church in New Jersey or something.
Yeah, New Jersey, and they come and they have this massacre because he did the Buddy Christ. He created the Buddy Christ thing. We need a friendly Christ, and they're like, no, that's wrong. That's a good one. That's a really, and he, like you said, he really dives into those subjects in a real way.
Yeah,
with fart jokes and dick jokes and silly stuff.
On the periphery, always, yeah. But I think it's definitely probably the smartest. It's not all cheap. It's not cheap, and that's what I like about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. It's good stuff. So that was your 85. Dogma. Okay, so my number 84. This is a Sidney Pollack directed film.
Ooh.
This is a film, a very, very, very dark, depressing film. They shoot horses, don't they?
Ah, okay.
This is a dark one.
Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who haven't seen this film. So this film is about so during the Great Depression, this MC, he called Rocky. He creates this contest for $1,500, and it's like you have to dance. The last person standing in this dance off wins this prize. And the film is basically an allegory for the desperation of poverty.
Yeah.
And the film it is harrowing, and you just like, it's so bleak. It's so kind of horrific. It's like the people that you run into, like there's like one of the main characters. She wants to be an actress in Hollywood, and you can just tell that.
Oh yeah.
She knows she's never gonna.
It's just not in the cards for some people.
It's not in the cards for you. Period. Yeah. And your life deterministically is just gonna be you're born and then you die.
Yeah.
There's a pregnant woman in this contest. A pregnant woman. And what's interesting too, again, like this is, I feel like these are stuff that comes up a lot. The media, the way that this media figure manipulates people to do this desperate, like the thing that comes to my mind is like the crab mentality kind of shit. Like when you see crabs in a bucket and they're just grabbing for each other, won't let anyone get out.
Yeah.
That's what comes to my mind. And this guy it's like putting humans in a situation where they are desperate and they just do desperate and depraved things. And the film, there's no la la sunshine, happy, joy. No.
Nope.
Your dreams are crushed. Your hopes are crushed. You have existential dread. There's this great line at the end of the film where she says, the whole world is like central casting, and they got it rigged before you showed up.
Yep.
It's so dehumanizing too. It just feels like this whole thing, it feels like you're dehumanizing people, and you're taking away their humanity and just making them like, I don't know,
It's funny too that like this comes out and is like critically acclaimed, and people are like, wow, yeah, this is really what it's like. Anyways, moving on, next audition. Like it's funny because I'm a big Sidney Pollack fan. I'm glad you brought this one up. Because I have seen this movie, but it was a long time ago. But I remember thinking like, yeah, this is another one of those movies that came out towards the end of the 60s or the 70s or whatever. That was like a very, very like kind of expository and like just kind of revealing the seedy underbelly of this thing. And I really like that about it. And especially for the time it came out, is a pretty big deal. Yeah,
this was a strong film. And again, it kind of connects with me because there's so many things, like you kind of realize in life, like there are some times where human beings are put into situations where they become destructive. And this sort of highlights that state of human, like that's a part of the human condition. Like if you get a person and you deprive, and if they just don't, by whatever it is, they don't have enough to live and survive or whatever, and you put some ideas in their head, you can set them off to do horrible things. And it's just, it's
yeah.
You'll be surprised how low a human can go.
Yeah, right.
And this is just a microcosm of that. Like, people are basically torturing themselves for $1,500 in this movie.
Well, and it's funny because like it was pertinent then. It's certainly pertinent now. I mean, people do a lot of crazy shit for $1,500 today in like today money. You know, like there's so many things, especially after being around it for about a year now. I'm gonna say like I see it, all of it. Like they're exploiting, for example, like young people. Will give you copy and credit, and you'll do it for the passion, And they basically use you. They'll use you. They'll have you work 12-hour days back to back to back for no pay, just for the because you're passionate about it, right? Like, and it's not just like for film, it's like writers, there's all these websites who they get all these people to write articles for them and stuff, and they'll publish them and they'll get all the clicks and all the money so that they give them exposure, right? You're doing everything for exposure. And so like the economy of it is kind of shifted, but it's all kind of the same thing. Like it's all about exploiting, making people that like have all of these hopes and dreams and exploiting that and giving them kind of false hope on purpose sometimes. Yeah. So this is very pertinent, I think, this one.
Yeah, it's super pertinent, and it's the film opens with them killing a horse, shooting a horse in the head, while also kind of initiating us into the actual story itself, which is this contest.
Yeah,
and then it ends with this very dark conversation between these two characters after they've kind of failed to live their dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
yeah, I love that. I got to rewatch it again because I love a downer ending. I love depressing movies. Clearly, I get like mad when Hollywood comes in the second half of Basic Instinct and like maybe they'll fall in love. I'm like, no, I don't want to see that shit. So yeah, I definitely want to rewatch this one. Yeah,
it's a good one. It's a really good one, and it's super harrowing, very tragic, but it's true to a certain part of the human condition, and that's why the film works.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's my number 84. They shoot horses, don't they?
Cool. I can take it lower than that. I can bring it down into the film. I can bring it down.
Go lower, man. Go lower.
So yeah, out of the, again, just there's a couple filmmakers. There's like probably 10 to 20 that I can think of that I love pretty much all of their movies, like so passionately and so deeply. And it's just like hard to pick where each one goes and how do I pare it down and what represents what. Like that was one of the struggles for me for coming up with the list. Joel Schumacher is one of those filmmakers for me because he gets a really, really, really bad rap for making those shitty Batman movies, but God damn it, he made so many good movies that people just don't talk about. One of the ones that I really like and made my list at number 84 is 8mm. This is, I love this movie so much. This is the darkest and dirtiest I think a studio, like a main studio, like ever got. Just ever got, period. This movie came out in 1999 and they had to fight every step, like frame by frame, every step of the way to get this like releasable, basically. But it was nice because the studio gave them leeway and they said, you can make whatever you want to make. We don't care. So basically Schumacher had come off of the Batman movies and he was just really looking to do something the complete opposite end of the spectrum. He was looking to do something really dark and dirty. So 8mm is about Nicolas Cage. He's a private investigator. And if you want to talk about great Nicolas Cage performances, he's a private investigator, and he's asked by this like rich woman or whatever to go through her husband's stuff. I don't remember exactly, but the point is he comes across this 8mm film and he watches it, and it's a snuff film. It's just a straight up snuff film about these guys killing this girl and doing all this crazy BDSM shit. And so he goes to the woman and she's like, your husband was into some shit. And she's like, no, like that can't be or whatever. She fucking has a heart attack and dies of shock. But before that, she basically tells him like, you need to find this girl, the girl that was in this film. Sorry, she doesn't get killed in the film, but she gets tortured or whatever. You need to find the girl that was in this film and, make it right. And so he takes it on and he just spirals. He gets into this world and he goes to LA, I believe, ultimately. And Joaquin Phoenix is in this movie. Great, just one of the most insane Joker type performances he ever put in. He plays this. He basically works at like a sex shop, and he's got his hair all spiked up, makeup, earrings, tattoos, fucking BDSM shit all over him, and he basically takes Nicolas Cage on the tour of this underworld. And this is the 90s, right? So all of the stuff was like underground basement, like VHS tape trading and stuff like that. And this movie shows you all that stuff. And I remember there's an interview with, again, Joel Schumacher passed away this year, I believe. It was a very sad day, but he did an interview about 9mm very recently, like last year, I want to say, where in the video store, they had all these TVs playing like actual hardcore porn. And that was just like they had shot the scenes and they had to re-edit them and cut literally frame by frame as to like what the censors would allow and what they wouldn't allow. And it's very interesting to read about this movie, at least for that, to learn about like how this movie got made. Ultimately, it comes down. So he goes through Joaquin Phoenix, great character performance. He finds this talent agent played by James Gandolfini. Wow, what a great performance by James Gandolfini in this fucking dirty, sleazy, like the dirtiest you've ever seen Gandolfini. He basically gets these girls to come in the audition. He gets them to suck his dick and do all these terrible things. And like you want to talk about using people. Like he's one of those guys. He knows that he's never going to give them callbacks. He has them do all these favors for him. And then he sells them off to this other guy sometimes who makes snuff films. And so Nicolas Cage is the vehicle through which we discover and it goes lower and lower and lower and lower, and ultimately we end up in the like torture porn basement where these guys make these films and they torture Nicolas Cage for a bit. So it's such a fucking filthy movie. And like I said, I believe it's statistically like the studios, like they put this one out and they were like, never again. This was made through Columbia, I believe. And they were like, just never again. Like, this is it. Like, we're not doing this shit. Like, we did it basically because, Joel Schumacher was a name and he wanted to do this. He got Nicolas Cage to sign on because what do we know about Nicolas Cage? He'll fucking do it if he thinks it's interesting, And this is a subject that's just like, yeah, we're going to make it like it's about snuff films. And they're like, what are those? Let me show you. And Joel Schumacher, again, known for his Batman movies and stuff, but like, and St. Elmo's Fire and Lost Boys and stuff like that, but like really kind of a psychological thriller kind of a guy, or just like a thriller kind of a guy. And he really, I think everything about this movie shines. The color palette is brown and dirty, and it's all dingy basements and bloody things and like fucked up sexual things, right? Everybody works for every character. Joaquin Phoenix, James Gandolfini, Peter Stormare's in this movie. He plays like the ultimate, like the ringleader of this like entire fucking snuff film operation. Like everybody just hits it in this movie. Catherine Keener plays Nicolas Cage's wife, and basically he'll do a thing, he'll come back home, he'll do a thing, he'll come back home, and like it starts to break up their marriage basically because Nicolas Cage is like, I've seen some shit. Like I can't be normal anymore after this stuff. And it's just like a really interesting, not very talked about movie. I think because it was buried, I think there was a very concerned effort after the movie came out by the studios to just bury it, to just never talk about it. But like, there's a lot of great talent in this movie. It's done earnestly and honestly. And it's just Joel Schumacher trying to show you the dirtiness. It does get a little silly. I mean, there are a little bit of Hollywood like plot contrivances in there. But it's absolutely worth watching for like just the lengths they went to like shoot these scenes in these actual, and with a lot of times like authentic real films playing in the background, like all these pornos and snuff films and stuff. So like really, really dirty movie, right up my alley.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah, you've seen Sinister, right? Mm-hmm. This almost seems like a really, really dark kind of thing of like Sinister-esque. Instead of a demon, it's a weirdo guy who's gonna torture you is behind the end of the rainbow. Kind
of, yeah, but it's not a horror movie. It's just a thriller, and the horror comes from just the subject matter. Because Sinister was like, we're gonna kill kids, but it's like done with jump scares and things like that. This movie is just like, I'm just a guy and I'm trying to investigate this shit, and now my life, I just can't be normal again after this experience. Yeah. I've seen the darkest that human beings can go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. I'll have to
you should check
put it
it
in the
out
queue.
if you're
Sounds
if you're in the mood for it, and
Mhm.
at least for the scenes with James Gandolfini. God damn, dude! I mean, that guy was so good at
Yeah.
playing these like fucked up degenerates. So yeah, I love this movie. It's just right up my alley. It's like it's in my milieu of just
Uh-huh.
dirtiness. Yeah. So
Cool.
recommend it.
Yeah. Okay. 8 millimeter is the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So my next film is part one of a series, and so this one was directed by the Japanese director Masaki Kobayashi. So this guy did Harakiri. He did Samurai Rebellion and Qui-Gon and some other films. This series is like, I think, one of the best trilogies ever. Like, it is incredible. And this is another one I feel like doesn't get talked a lot, sort of similar to how I started this segment with The Best of Youth.
Mm-hmm.
This is this massive, sprawling epic, 9 hours and 40 minutes of total length of the 3 parts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically about the war period Japan, and it's told through the eyes of this guy, Kaji, played by Tatsuya Nakadai, one of the great Japanese actors. Him and Mofune and the other guy, I forget that guy's name, the third guy, who's also in like Seven Samurai.
Yeah, I never remember their names, but like some of these Japanese guys, like you know when you see him for sure.
Yeah, Nakadai, he's in like everything.
Yeah.
Him, it's either like, I swear the 3 of them are in like half of all the great Japanese movies, basically.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember exactly how their like studio system worked, but I'm pretty sure it was like those were the guys, and they're just gonna keep putting him in stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. They're like, yeah, it's you. You get to choose one.
Yeah, right.
You want Mifune, you want Nakadai, or you want the other guy? Which one do you want?
What's the film called?
It's called the Human Condition, and it's a 3-part series. So this is Human Condition Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like a subtitle.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what this one is. I just think of them as kind of one thing, and it's just 1 through 3.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this film. So it starts off, and we're following this guy, Kaji, and he. So again, this is like Japan when they've gone into China and they're successfully invading, and they're now got their war machine, pumping out stuff in China. So this guy, so he starts working as a supervisor in a labor camp, like these Chinese, like basically he's overseeing these Chinese POWs or something like that.
Oof.
Yeah, it's fucked up. And so he's like a good guy, but he's a good guy in a bad time, in a horrible time. And he spends a lot of this movie trying to make sure that, the people are treated well, and that basically tries to fight the corrupt system, but he can't. He just kind of can't. It's just kind of overwhelming him. Because, again, it's just this imperial Japan, and it's the war machine is spitting out this absolute evil. And then, there's a love story. So him and it's like Mikio. They're basically getting married, and they're like gonna have kids and stuff. Blah blah blah. But like meanwhile, the stuff he's getting into with the Japanese, war machine is pulling him away from her, and also getting him into these moral quandaries where he's having to like try and fight back, but that's getting him into more trouble because they're not having like the Japanese hierarchy is not having any of it. And then the more he starts to try and push back and like make sure that the prisoners are okay, they start to look at him as, are you a conspirator? Are you evil? Are you, are you trying to sabotage us from within? And that's, in this part of the series, that's kind of the give and take of it. Mm-hmm. He's basically trying to protect his family and protect his inner moral center, but it's very difficult in the world that he's stuck in. And that's basically kind of what happens in the film, in this part of the series. He's just like trying to fight back, but it's sort of it. Yeah, in the end, what happens is, as punishment for him trying to protect the Chinese POWs, they draft him into the war. And he's basically a conscientious objector.
Right, like a pacifist or something.
Yeah, the way they play him off is like he's kind of, again, he's just a person stuck in this world, and the world doesn't make sense to him. The war doesn't make sense. The inhumanity doesn't make sense. But he's not a Japanese imperialist. He's not anti-imperialist. He's just like a guy trying to live his life, and then this whirlwind of insanity has just swept him up into this horribleness. You just can't get away from it. Just can't get away from it. And the society punishes him for trying to be good by putting him into the place he would least want to be, which is in a war.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It is an absolute. This whole series, again, the next 3 things I'm going to talk about are all this series. It is cool. One of the most amazing film series I've ever seen, trilogies I've ever seen. It's absolutely incredible.
Some of the scale of those like Japanese epics just blow my mind. I can't fathom the kind of system that gets that together, that get that made at that level of quality with everything. Like it never made any sense to me. And I'm not just talking about like the Kurosawa stuff that everybody is like, again, spoon fed to watch. Like you have to see Seven Samurai, you have to see Rashomon, you have to see these movies. Yeah, like a lot of the other, because I went through like a Japanese cinema phase and I saw a couple movies. Some of the fucking wild stuff that they made. So yeah, I missed this one clearly, but some of that stuff is just insane, man.
This one, yeah, absolutely. This one is pretty mind blowing. Like when you really like go through it and you see what they did here, it's really mind blowing. It's kind of weird that it's not talked about as much. I feel like this series should be talked about. I mean, basically the way that we talk about like The Godfather, the way we talk about, especially because this is so interesting too, because it is a Japanese perspective on World War II that, it's not just like pushing shit under the rug,
Right.
Like it's like saying like, yeah, this was the cost for us of what we did in that war. And I feel like this is a time period like the 60s in Japan was when they were really grappling with that question. Finally, they were finally like able to in media kind of openly express, okay, yeah, we like in the way the Japanese could culturally talk about how what they did that was so barbaric and destructive and evil and horrific. And how it all splashed back on them at the end with getting nuked and getting invaded and all this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, this I would put it up there with like The Godfather, Lord of the Rings, those type of trilogies. And especially like something about World War II. The only comparison I would have would be something like Band of Brothers, or like those kind of big.
They're just like actual epics, right?
Yeah. Like, because this is over 9.5 hours of story.
That's wild.
And it's all so good, and like the arc that this character goes through is like amazing. It's so amazing. I think this was based on some other kind of material someone had written, like a long novel or a long series of things. Yeah, so that's part 1. It's amazing.
Jesus. Wow.
It's amazing. The Human Condition, yeah. Part 1.
Wild. Cool. That was number 83?
That was number 83. That's right.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna whisk you away from the shores of the Pacific and bring you all the way to good old America town, baby. This is a movie that I so badly wish that I would have made. or something that I would make if you just showed up and you said we got a couple producers, here's a couple $1 million, let's make a movie. Like this is pretty much distilled like the movie that I would make like right now. This movie is Red Rock West. It's not talked about. It's weird that it's not talked about almost at all. It's directed by John Dahl, who made a lot of really cool neo-noir movies in the 90s. He did stuff like The Last Seduction. Ultimately, he did Rounders with Matt Damon. And everybody knows that fucking movie. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But Red Rock West is like his second or third feature. And it's so good because it's so like distilled. Like it's such a great movie because of like it's just so distilled. It's not overblown. It doesn't get too far ahead of itself. It's a very simple story. And it's very cool. So basically, it's another. I didn't even realize that I just did this back to back. So it stars Nicolas Cage, and he's a drifter. He's just fucking around looking for work, driving. Like the opening scene of this movie is so good. It's over the credits, the text credits on the screen is just like on the side of the road on one of those like classic American highways, just 2 lanes and just fucking desert and absolutely nothing. It's just Nicolas Cage's car parked on the side of the road, and he's shirtless outside doing one-handed push-ups. Basically, over the entire like opening credits of this, it's so perfect. It's just like so. It just tells you everything you need to know about the style of this movie and what it's going for. So basically, he's a drifter. He ends up in this town called Red Rock. Red Rock or Red Rock West, whatever. It's the name of the movie. And he gets involved with the sheriff or something, and he's looking for. He gets denied for all the work, so he goes into this town. And he ends up speaking to this bartender, and there's this guy there at the bar, and they're talking in like double entendres, but they both think that they're talking about different things. But Nicolas Cage is just playing along because he's a drifter and he's just looking for work. So basically, he walks into the bar, and the guy sitting at the bar is like, "Are you the guy?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm the guy." And he's like, so, you're ready, you're going to do it for work. I'll give you 500 now and 500 later or whatever it is. And he's just like, yeah, I'll do it right now. He gives him the cash, whatever. He's like, great. Okay. So here's where he lives and, this and that. So basically he gets mistaken for a hitman. So he wanders into this town and he gets mistaken as a hitman. And there's like this crazy love story that ends up happening. So the actual hitman, so Nicolas Cage, he pockets the money and he's like, I'm getting the fuck out. I'm not doing this. He's like, that's, great that happened. But like, I'm moving on, right? I don't want to get caught up in this shit, but I made some money. So cool. Turns out, so the actual hitman rolls into town, right? Like just minutes after Nicolas Cage excuses himself to go to the bathroom to leave, the actual hitman walks into the bar, played by Dennis Hopper. And one of those, and he's wearing fucking like snakeskin, like fucking cowboy boots, cowboy hat. Like he is just Dennis Hopper at his fucking peak, hitman style guy. Turns out the guy that hired him is the sheriff of the small town. So all of these layers get peeled back, and it's like this crazy like avalanche of like thing you don't expect happens after thing you don't expect happens, and Nicolas Cage is just this like random asshole that gets caught up in the middle of it all. And it's not a comedy or anything. It's like a neo-noir kind of a thing, but it's got a little bit of lightheartedness to it. So basically what the whole thing ends up being is that the sheriff ends up hiring a hitman to get his wife killed because there's some money involved and there's inheritance, something, yada, yada. Nicolas Cage ends up falling in love with this woman. And because he goes to warn her, basically, like, now that Dennis Hopper's in town, he's like, look, we don't know each other, but Dennis Hopper's here to kill you. Just thought I should let you know. Okay, bye. And then it all just kind of spirals out of control. So it's basically just like a really tight, I feel like this could be a play. And you got Nicolas Cage, J.T. Walsh plays Wayne, the sheriff. You got Nicolas Cage, J.T. Walsh, Dennis Hopper, and Lara Flynn Boyle of Twin Peaks fame. And those are kind of your main four. And it's shot in this small town. There's not a lot of locations, but there's just got really, really interesting scenarios, right? And you don't know, kind of like, you just don't know what this movie's about, like, once it starts. And it's shot in like the most, he goes out of his way to make it as noir feeling as possible, especially once Nicolas Cage falls in love with the guy's wife that's trying to get killed. Now he's invested. Now he's trying to get her out. And they're running away from Dennis Hopper and this like crazy whacked out sheriff together. It's a great old time. Red Rock West, highly recommended. And it's just one of those things. It was made in 1993, and it just feels like one of those, like a budging filmmaker, or burgeoning, I should say, like just filled with talent. And he just really likes, movies from the 40s and 50s and neo-noir or like noir movies or whatever. And so he just happened to make one set in the middle of fucking like the Midwest with Nicolas Cage and a bunch of other crazy rednecks. And so, yeah, that's Red Rock West is absolutely one of my favorite movies because it just like shows you that it is possible to just take a really simple story, make it in like one or like just a couple different locations, as long as the scenarios are interesting and it keeps you gripped, because it does, right? Like that setup is so great. If he just wanders into this town and he ends up being mistaken for a hitman, and that's something that's happened throughout like classic Hollywood movies. And it's just fun to see that done in like an R-rated modern way. And it's got Dennis Hopper playing a crazy cowboy hitman. So
I mean, that's like half of the Hitchcock filmography is like, oh, we thought you were that guy.
Seriously, yeah. Except that guy happens to be Nick Cage this time around.
Yeah, it's Nick Cage, and then he's being chased by Dennis Hopper. I like that. That's a real twist on like North by Northwest. Grungier.
Very grungy, very like everything is basically shot over a filter of like cigarette smoke and blue lighting and blue or red lighting, so it's like it's very stylized in that way too, which is cool.
Nice. Yeah. The great Nicolas Cage strikes again.
Yeah, these are the types of, and as we creep along this list, these are the types of movies that really, really hit home for me. Not necessarily the overblown, crazy, big spectacle type movies, but the really small, like the Hitchcockian, like scenario type movies. I like those a lot. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So my number 82. Again, sticking with this series, The Human Condition Part 2. So, same director, same actor, all that kind of stuff. So again,
were they shot back to back at the same time, or?
Okay, so what's interesting about this? So the release dates that are given, it's like 59, and then the other two are 61. So I'm pretty sure they shot them all at once. But it
just feels like it, right? It's like those. It's like the Sergio Leone movies. They were all done within a year or two. All at the same time, but they were released like 6 years apart, or like so over the course of, I should say like 5 or 6 years. Yeah, because they were being localized and translated and re-edited for America and all that stuff.
Yeah. So they had to do all the posts, and the post took a while because like they have this.
Well, the post took a while, and the marketing. No, they held them because they in America like they didn't want to release those types of westerns in the 60s. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I'm not like. I have no idea how they decided to release this.
Because this sounds to me like a fucking huge undertaking.
Yeah, it does, right? Like, it's basically a 9-hour, like, a film like this. This is such a unique series of films. Because today, this would just be a HBO miniseries.
It sounds, like you said, like a Band of Brothers thing or something.
Yeah, it would just be a HBO miniseries. But they made 3-hour movies in the late 50s.
Yeah.
And they shot them all back to back to back. And it's basically one thing. It's one massive story. It's one 9.5-hour story. And God knows what the budget on this was.
Yeah.
This feels like one of those, again, like we're talking about, what Nolan's able to do, what Spielberg has done, what other Kubrick has done. Like, you're the guy who has the clout, and then you tell the studio, okay, I want to do this massive thing. I got our guy. He's in. We just need X amount of money, and we're going to shoot 250 days, basically straight to shoot this whole thing. And they say, okay. And then you get something like this.
Yeah.
Because this was a massive undertaking, like the scale and the scope and like the epicness of it. It's all so big. So in this story, Kaji. So again, the last time we saw him in the previous film, he lost his exemption, so he has to join the war effort. So he gets conscripted into the army. He's in China. They, right away they suspect him of being a leftist sympathizer.
Oh, no.
and so he's like in trouble. And so again, society punishes him more for caring about other people, and they assign him really, really tough duties. Despite how kind of like he's good at what he does, but they kind of still, he would be someone they would put as an officer, but instead they punish him and they make him,
right.
do the kind of grunty stuff, deal with these kind of idiots, basically. And a lot of all of these films have to do with his, on a certain level, it's naivete, but I think it's really his humanity. Like he's trying to infuse humanity into these situations that are inhuman and sort of, cold and calculating, and they're trying to push this imperialism on everyone, and he just can't do it. And then society pushes back on him and punishes him for being a human being. Basically.
Yeah, for being the voice of fucking reason.
So then he takes over this troop, and there's all this conflict. Basically, what happens in the end, the war turns for worse for Japan. The Soviets are coming, and they basically take him out. The Soviets take out the Japanese, and him and whoever's left of his band of people are fending for themselves. Their army is decimated. It's decimated, and he's just like off on his own, trying to hide from the Soviets so that he doesn't become a prisoner of war. And that's pretty much how this part of the story arc ends.
That's so crazy to me to make, like, the clearly, like we were talking about, I think last week, like they figured out kind of the form a long time ago, and then we've just been iterating on it ever since. Like the fact that you can take such an insanely complicated and epic kind of story and then make it make sense not only over the course of one movie each time, but over the course of 3 movies, and have an arc that goes over all of them. That is the kind of like magic type shit that I don't think I'll ever get a handle on. The way that you're able to have that structure over such an extended period of time, over like just the content that you're making is really, really fascinating to me. Like you've got to have some like pretty fucking magical scribes in there to make that work.
Yeah, like again, the pure mastery of the art form. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love so much about this. Like this is just like one of those rare things that happen where you have a master director who understands the form completely, who's basically telling us a 9-hour epic that tells us about how destructive this time period was culturally for Japanese people. Mm-hmm, that's what this film is about. Mm-hmm. That's what this film series is about. And it's like, it's amazing to behold when you see the whole thing like put together. Yeah, and I think you would really like. I think you would really like it too, because again, it's not a happy story.
Yeah, I mean everything you've said so far, the fact that it doesn't shy away from some of the stuff that they did, because a lot of these movies, especially done because like it's a Japanese film about what the Japanese people did, and so like every fucking America rah rah army movie that was made in the 30s and 40s is like that. Is just like America is the good guy and we did nothing wrong ever. And so it appeals to me very much that they were able to make something that was like they were able to look at it and say like, this the fucked up shit that we did. Here it is.
Yeah, and I think they did, because like you have to kind of be subtle. Like they still to this day are not going to.
Oh no! They don't show you that much stuff. No,
they still to this day don't. Like I remember there was this big thing that happened. This was like the crazy worlds of American politics. So the PM of Japan came with Obama to Pearl Harbor. And there was some kind of deal where he didn't apologize, but he kind of apologized or some kind of weird shit. And then Obama kind of apologized for nuking, but he didn't. And it was, but like it's so absurd. It's so absurd. Like, that became a huge thing. How dare he apologize for nuking? The nukes were good. We should have nuked them again. Like the people came out and were just like totally crazy. But the thing was, both sides, the Americans and the Japanese, were mad that they tried to like have this moment where it's like, this was bad. The fact that we had to have this war and this conflict against each other was bad. And like, it's like, we can't say that. We can't say that it's bad that people died in a war.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. And that's recent too.
Yeah. That was probably 6 years ago, probably like 2014, maybe 15. Yeah. Like
that's wild.
People went insane.
And not only
on
that,
both sides, in Japan and in America.
That's wild. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's not like they said, yeah, well, I'm sorry, I nuked you. Yeah, I'm sorry, we did Pearl Harbor. It was just like,
no, it sounds like they were a little reserved. Yeah,
it's just they had that moment where it's like, you know, you look at each other like, yeah, man, yeah.
That's a politics.
and that was too much.
No, you never want to give your upper hand up, I guess.
It's strange. It's all crazy. So yeah, I think this film series is such a great, incredible job of like handling all this big stuff. You know, Japan at this time, at the height of, so like at the beginning of this film, it's Japan at the height of its imperialism. Yeah, it's stretched out in China. It's doing all this stuff.
Yeah,
and you know, Kaji's almost like the conscience. Like, it's like, this is wrong and it's gonna end bad. And the more he says that, the more he's punished.
Yeah, right.
Punished. Yeah. So yeah, that's my number 82.
82. Okay, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess it's my turn. 82 is this is an interesting one. This is one of those movies that made me cry like a fucking child. Which if you followed everything up to this point, you're like, well, this guy's really just into fucking schlock and genre pictures.
Yeah,
like right, and just like kind of exposing the seedy underbelly of whatever, as long as you show me all of it. But this movie made me cry like a little baby. It's called Awakenings. It's a Penny Marshall film from 1990. And it is once again Robin Williams and Robert De Niro, and it's based on a true story, also based on a book, also written by Steve Zalian. So right there, you just got it. And it's about, if I don't remember, again, like I'm not a doctor, so I'm not an expert, but I know this. Robin Williams plays a doctor who basically works at this clinic where with just like a bunch of these victims of an encephalitis epidemic many years ago. And so basically it's an entire wing where these people are just catatonic and they don't move, they don't speak, and the research says that they never will again. Their entire, like, everything is fried, everything about them is fried, like their memories that they don't know, because you know it's kind of how it works with these diseases and stuff like dementia and things like that. It's just like we don't really know, right? Like the question is like, is the person still in there? Are they reaching? Are they screaming out? You know, like are you actually trapped inside your own head? Really, really, really scary questions like that. So we don't really know, but these people are basically all catatonic, and Robert De Niro plays one of the patients. And the movie is about basically Robin Williams is such an optimist, and he plays it like the most just. He plays it as emotional as anything he's ever played. Like he plays it so, like, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but he plays it like there's no faults with this guy. Like he is so committed to like, I can fix this. There's experimental medicine and I can bring these people back. And of course, all of the science says, no, you can't. But again, this is based on a real story. And what ends up happening is he ends up trying this experimental thing. And Robert De Niro begins to wake up out of his catatonic state, and then they start testing it on more and more patients. And basically, at one point in this movie, the entire wing of these catatonic patients wake up, and they all discover like they're alive, you know. And it's like this really, really heartfelt, interesting thing. But then the tragedy of it is that, again, because of the nature of these diseases, we don't really know. all of them end up kind of degrading back into the catatonic state. So they come back, they basically kind of come back to life, and they start to rekindle these relationships, and their family visits them, and there's all these great like emotional scenes, and they're like, oh my god, fucking dad's back, grandma's back, whatever. And then they all start to fall back into the state where the movie began. And again, Robin Williams is the absolute anchor of this movie. He's the heart of it, because he's just he so believes that he can help them. And then Robert De Niro, on the other hand, possibly, I think, my personal, like, the most emotional performance he's ever given, in my opinion, because he does such a good job. He does a lot with his like facial muscles and things like that in this, because he is playing a catatonic patient, and he has to do a lot of scenes where like Robin Williams is like showing him tennis balls or whatever, and he has to like do a lot with a little bit of his face to show that he's recognizing these things, and that's what tips off the doctor. So anyways, it's really, it's like a masterclass on acting, sure, from these two guys, but the story itself is like, it's an optimistic story, but it's ultimately the most depressing thing you've ever seen. Right. So yeah, it's I really like this movie because I didn't expect it to be as affecting as it was. And it is made, it's not, it is like a Hollywood picture, but it's done in a really like kind of honest, earnest way. It's not trying to be like a happy or a sad movie. It just kind of, this is just kind of the story that was. And again, written by Steve Zalian, so who we just cannot fucking miss.
Yeah,
so,
he's a master.
Exactly. And this movie hits you in the feels 100% of the time. It absolutely makes my list as like one of the most like emotional movies. And again, just Robin Williams, he played the serial killer in the other movie I talked about, and then he's playing this like archetypical good guy in this one. And he's just so believable. He's got a little bit of that like I think this is the same year that Mrs. Doubtfire came out, where like he just has that like he cares so deeply, kind of like he sells that so well.
Yeah, he's got the empathy gene.
The empathy gene, yeah, he's got that like goodness about him, and he really
Good Will
shines in this
Hunting
movie.
stuff,
right?
You know, that
exactly.
scene with Good Will Hunting, yeah.
Right. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Yeah, it's not your fault.
Yeah, no, this movie is absolutely fucking great, and it's worth watching, if only just for those performances. But yeah, absolutely one of my favorites.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that film. I've yet to see it. I'll try and watch it at some point. But yeah, I've definitely heard of it. And it sounds very powerful.
Yeah, it's. I feel like it's another one of those things that, like, again, it came out, it got Oscar noms, it got all the buzz, but it just kind of gets forgotten because the studios used to make so many interesting movies like this, you know. And this is very much like a studio movie, because you don't get to have these guys in your movie if you're not backed by.
You got to pay.
You got to pay up, yeah, and you're getting Zalian to write it, and you're getting Penny Marshall to direct it. So it is kind of like a Hollywood supergroup kind of a thing going on. But it's just cool that they were able to make these movies. But it does get swept under the rug a little bit, because we forget, like, what was it? Fucking Dances with Wolves came out that year. Like, it's just like weird how Hollywood works sometimes. But this is definitely something I would tell people not to sleep on. No pun intended.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we're at number 81.
Yes.
So this is The Human Condition, Part 3. So so in Part 1, you know, Kaji starts as a guy who's sort of using his position to stay out of the war, while also kind of, you know, overseeing these labor camps. But then again, his humanity gets him sucked into the war. Then in Part 2, he's sucked in the war, and he sort of tries to use his humanity to make the soldiers, like, basically there's this story arc where there are some people who treat their own soldiers very sadistically, and then that sadism gets put on even worse onto the Chinese people. And so he's trying to fight that, and that gets him sucked even deeper into the war. And so now, at the end of the second film, he's trying to run away from the Soviets, who've just taken over and completely destroyed the Japanese. Now we start this film where Kaji, and they are basically full survival mode. Like, the opening of this film is just like him hiding in the dirt and shit with his friends that are left. And it's like that bad. It's like that bad. It's really bad for them. And so, yeah, they spent like the first, I don't know, couple, half an hour or so trying to evade them. They get captured. And basically they get subjected to the same kind of stuff that they were subjecting Chinese people to at the beginning of the film.
Feeling that's where this was going. Yeah.
And so it gets so bleak. It gets super bleak. And, you start to see like, there's no way out for him at this point, which is really kind of sad. Yeah, so he's just getting tortured, and like the Chinese and whoever has him, like they're just taking out their revenge on the Japanese for all of the horrible shit that they have been perpetuating on them for, at this point, it's probably what, like 5-6 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The absolute horrors. And it's like, well, we got you, motherfuckers. And so yeah, it's just it's very powerful because, like, again, he's not an evil person, right? He's not. We've consistently seen that this guy has heart, and he has this almost naive sense of like trying to do good. And the more good he tries to do, the more the backlash of society just hits him really hard.
Yeah.
There's basically him and this other character spend a lot of time together in the film, and they're kind of trying to survive it together. It ends tragically.
Wow.
And the ending of this film is like, it is absolutely one of the bleakest things you'll ever see.
You sold me.
I won't give it away, but I will say it has a Lucian ending. It's
good.
It's not rainbows and butterflies and I'm home and I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
It is some bleak shit.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's fitting because
it
like
serves the
like their whole society got completely obliterated. And this is kind of a stand-in for what happened,
Yeah.
Take this good person, destroy them over and over and over again, and then the tragedy. It's just a tragedy. So it's a 9-hour tragedy.
Yeah. Cool. No, I definitely gotta check it out. Now, is the main character based on like a historical figure, or is he kind of just like inserted into this?
I don't know. Let me.
Just because it kind of gives me the vibe of like it's basically like an odyssey throughout this like period in history, and they just like created a guy, to kind of help audiences along.
So it's based on a 6-volume novel published in 56 to 58. Let me see if they have any.
It's probably just they probably
partially autobiographical. So it's sort of about this person, the person who wrote this.
Wow.
So it's sort of about his life, basically.
Christ, Jesus.
This seems like basically, the filmmaker, him and this guy probably kind of knew each other. Because the film and the book came out basically at the same time. Like the book series came out from 59 to 61, and that's when the films came out.
Wow.
So it's almost like some Harry Potter kind of shit.
Yeah. That's really cool.
So I guess the answer to your question is like it's semi-autobiographical. The ending is more thematic, obviously.
Sure.
I guess this guy, the writer, he lived something like this.
He probably lived through some of those. Okay. They're doing some fucking work in the hallway. There was making noise. No, but yeah, it sounds like he's probably had some experiences in the war and had a really good perspective on it.
Crazy. especially like this is an epic kind of series. Like this guy starts off as basically like kind of a hoity-toity rich guy who's overseeing his slice of the empire that's been handed to him. He ends up in a fucking POW camp with no shot of ever having any kind of future.
I wonder if even subconsciously this was in the back of someone's mind when they were setting up the Deer Hunter, because it sounds like it's kind of a similar thing where like the first hour of that movie is just it's this great big wedding scene and it's all great, and you got the rich guy and you got the working class guy and they're all kind of hanging out together, and then they all go to Vietnam, and Some of them make it, some of them don't. Stuff like that. So I wonder if this was like on their mind, at least when they were setting up some of those, like, because America eventually made this type of self-reflective or just like expository thing about the shit that they did, beginning with Vietnam. I feel like is kind of when they started.
Yeah, it needed to be the right war, because you're not going to see like the America Did Bad World War II movie.
Nah, never.
I mean, I don't even know if that like I don't even know if that exists.
I don't know. I don't think it does. Yeah.
I really don't think it's like, we really did some bad stuff to Japanese people.
Yeah, and I don't even think you're going to see any like you have been seeing. There have been a lot of smaller scale like indie movies made about like Afghanistan and like specifically like the 2003 stuff. Like Brian De Palma made a film about it. Very low budget, very handheld, very digital. Very, very fucking affecting. I don't know if you know his film Casualties of War about Vietnam. It's with Michael J. Fox and Sean Penn, and it's basically about Michael J. Fox is just like the goody two shoes, and they're part of this company, and the company decides to just rape this Vietnamese girl over and over and over again, and it's based on a true story, obviously. And they passed her around, and they kept her prisoner, and they just like used her for all these things. Dude, it's fucking horrific. And then so it's just like all about this tension about like these like fucking jock assholes, you know, like the Sean Penn people, and the Michael J. Fox like, I'm just here to fight a war, I guess. Like, what am I doing here? Kind of a thing. And it's cool that it's fucked up. It's cool that we got some of those perspectives. And but it sounds like it all kind of traces back to this series.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like this is a super epic kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I'm not trying to like. I'm not.
Oh yeah, no. I was just saying like if any filmmaker who sees this film, I'm telling you,
it's working, right? It's working in the background.
I'm telling you, see this, you're like, holy shit! What am I doing? What am I doing with my life and my career? How can I be making this, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like anything where you can approach this level of story, where, like you said, this is a 9.5-hour film that has this massive story arc. That it's not only is it about the character, it's about like the thematic elements are so strong. It's about society.
Yeah,
like this is what you live to make, you know?
Yeah, but so some people can do that shit, and some people like me, they just want to make Red Rock West. You know, like sometimes, this is expert level shit.
This is super hard.
Yeah.
I was trying to read about if there's any interesting stuff about the making of this series. Took 4 years to complete.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. So the total of the runtime was 579 minutes. It was released as a trilogy between 59 and 61, was shown at various film festivals. And it typically sold out. Okay, it's interesting. 1999.
This sounds like the movie to see.
Yeah.
And why would it not sell out? Like, this is the fucking event of the season. Yeah.
Oh, Arrow Video released a dual format Blu-ray DVD edition in 2016.
Ooh.
see if you can find that.
Oh, of course I can. I love Arrow. I buy shit from them all the time.
6-disc set includes an introduction and select scene commentary by critic Philip Kemp, theatrical trailers, and a booklet written by David Desser. It's interesting.
Cool. Sounds like make a plan out of it.
I'm just trying to. Yeah, so that's about it. I don't want to bore people. If people want to read more about it, but it's to me again, it's one of the greatest epic series trilogies ever made in the history of film, and it's pretty incredible. It is absolutely incredible what was achieved with this series of films.
Gotta check that out. Very cool.
Yeah, so that's my number 81, The Human Condition, Part 3.
We made it. We made it to 81. Woo! Yeah. My number 81 is like again, it's kind of like a stand-in more or less. Like there are potentially other films by this director that could have been this one, but it's got to be this one. It has to be. Il buono, il brutto, il cattivo. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Yeah, it's kind of unfuckwithable.
Love it. I love that movie.
Yeah. Like, personally, I think I like Once Upon a Time in the West a little bit more, but for like different reasons, right? But like this is the one that like this is the one that I put on my list. Like this is the one that kind of has to go on your list. I feel like it just does so much right. Like it there's a lot building up to this movie. There's two other movies that again they all shot like basically at the same. I think they shot the first one, which was just a remake of
the Yojimbo. Yeah.
Yojimbo, yeah. Which funnily, like the only reason that movie exists is because like Clint Eastwood saw Yojimbo. He's like, I'm down to do a Western of that. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. He went to Spain and he made this movie with these maniacs. But then he came back and he shot 2 and 3 back to back. So it's a trilogy. Kind of in name, it's the Man with No Name trilogy is the way they advertise it these days. In name only, kind of. There's no kind of through line other than Clint Eastwood just plays a protagonist, an unnamed protagonist. He has different kind of backstories each time. So in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I feel like is kind of where like all of it comes together. Like stylistically, everybody's comfortable working with each other. It's all the same crew, right? It's all this is shot in the same locations, and it is just this great fucking epic story of the good, the bad, and the ugly. You've got these guys, they're all chasing after the same treasure and all the hijinks that ensue and all the betrayals and backstabbings. In particular, Eli Wallach in this movie. I mean, they're all great. Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach, Lee Van Cleef. Love them all. It's funny now that I think of it, they're like adding one each time. So the first one had Clint Eastwood, the second one added Lee Van Cleef, the third one added Eli Wallach. But it's just such a fun, like they're fun characters. And for me personally, why I like this so much, I don't have to fucking explain to you the good, the bad, and the ugly. But for me, the reason that I like it so much and that I put it on the list is that again, we're at that point in the late 60s where we begin to get a little more stylized, a little more bloody with things. And The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is kind of the holy grail when it comes to, because of course we got more violent after this, you know, we got a lot more like shittier, more low budget movies, but like this is on a massive scale, like a huge scale. This is like a 3-hour movie. They blow up a bridge. There's an entire fucking war that they like stage at the end of the movie. And then, you know, some of the most iconic, the music, you know, the Ennio Morricone music. Again, it's kind of untouchable. It's kind of unfuckwithable. It's the stuff of movie legend, at least the way that it's been kind of picked up and people ran with it. But stylistically, I think it's got a lot of the stuff that I'm into, the sensibilities of the like the badass, you know, kind of gives no shits guy who doesn't really have anything holding him. You know, he's got like maybe a set of morals, but like not really. He's just in it for the money. You know, you've got like a murder and then you've got like a Joker basically. And cool stylized violence. Very like Sergio Leone famously like those extreme close-ups of the eyes, the editing, right, the showdowns, the stuff. It just does a lot of stuff that just wasn't being done, especially in Hollywood movies in the 60s. And of course, you know, this gets picked up and it gets put in the Wild Bunch or it gets put in whatever other movies that Hollywood makes down the line. But it is like a 100% a European movie that just happened to translate, and it translated very, very well. The main issues I have with it, you know, like they've done a couple like remasters of it. They've gone back and ultimately the last version that exists, I think, is the best one because they got Clint Eastwood and they got Eli Wallach back to like redub some of the lines, because I always thought that the dubbing in these movies were just pure garbage by design. That's part of the charm. But they finally like they got it right. I think the last time they remastered these for Blu-ray. So definitely, I mean, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It kind of has to be on my list for. It just has to complete the package. You know, it's a violent Western with morally ambiguous characters and like them doing dirty things. So like, you know.
So I really, really love this film. I think, you know, this might be the first Western I ever saw.
Oh,
it feels like it. To me, it feels like this was the first Western I ever saw. I have a very, very strong nostalgic feeling about this film because me and my dad would watch it a lot. a lot. So for me, like, I love this, and this film is like, you know, I really also kind of like Once Upon a Time in the West a bit more as a film,
Right.
But I have these really strong feelings about this film, so like I like this film more.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this film is that it's so kind of goofy and whimsical and kind of comedic. In a lot of ways, like the Tuco character is like one of the great characters I think really ever. Ever, because like he's almost kind of like the protagonist because he has an actual character in this film. Like he, you know, we have that scene where he meets with his brother who joined the church. He has that line like, you know, you joined the church and I rob people. Like we have both had a choice. And he's a really great character actually, Tuco. And like dude, he just has so many good lines. I love that scene where like the guy comes to kill him. He's like in the bathtub. He's like, blah, 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 and then he just shoots him. He just shoots him and kills him. And he's like, hey, if you're gonna shoot, don't talk.
Right.
A couple of people have tried to rip that line off, and it never works in any other context.
Sure.
That line was in the Stephen Sommers movie with the fucking
Van Helsing.
It was in It was in Van Helsing. Yes.
Jesus. Wow.
What's her name says that line to I don't know what a bat demon woman that
it's all it's in there.
It's terrible. But yeah, I and the music is so good. You know,
the music is untouchable. Yeah.
Everyone has their motif, and then like that scene, the Ecstasy of Gold scene, is like religious levels of good.
It is religious. That's a good way to put it. I didn't know how to describe that scene, so I just didn't. Yeah, it's just such a, not only just because like you're at that point in the movie, but just like overall, just as a scene on its own, like yes, you're so invested in this fucking guy's like journey at this point, and it's shot in such an interesting way. With him running around the graveyard and the fucking
the like swirling and swirling, I feel like that scene is made in the edit and the score
for sure. Yeah,
it just you're just like he like again Ennio Morricone is one of the absolute greatest composers ever. Basically, him and John Williams are like the gods. They're gods on Mount Olympus, sitting there looking down at other people, and then there's like the demigods like Hans Zimmer.
Right.
But he's an absolute god, and like there's like I really wonder if I'd love to see someone who sucks at scoring films but like still does it score this film and see how differently it feels. How differently would the ending feel where it's just three guys staring at each other for like 10 minutes?
If you put like a Brian Tyler or something, some guy who just does like Fast and Furious movies or whatever.
Yeah, just someone who's like they're average or below average. Like what is it?
Right.
What like how different is that? It's probably very different.
It's not the same. No, not at all. Yeah.
Right? But you put that score in with that style and it is palpably powerful cinema.
Absolutely, exactly, absolutely, very
because it's literally three guys staring at each other. There is tension, right? There is tension, and like once you, that was kind of like when I first saw Once Upon a Time in the West. Like I didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me the first time, but like once he showed up, I was like, okay, now I kind of get it. But like before that, I didn't see that it was like, you know, and he does that a lot. These long, drawn out.
It's funny too because the first time I saw that movie, I didn't know what was going on because I mean that's the point, right? But I was riveted for no reason. It's just like a fucking fly on a guy's face or something, and I'm just like I'm into it. I don't know. There's something about the way that he shoots those close-ups. And the way that it's edited.
It's very masterful. It is very masterful.
Yeah.
Like the level of tension that he builds, and that's really his style.
Yeah.
Build tension, like this, like you know, use close up, and then reveal something in like a, kind of like a master shot, and then you're like, oh shit, okay. And you know, at the end of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it's just like these looks, glances.
Yeah.
Guy moving his hand,
and then like the hands. Yeah.
And then he moves his hand away because another guy looks, you know, and the ending is just so like it's so crazy because like literally they are. I really wonder how he directed them too because it's so many of these small moments, right? It's like Tuco moves this way and he moves a little too fast, and then the guy looks at him, and then he goes slowly, unclips the thing on his gun, and then he walks slowly, and then they all get into this 3-point position, and then they're standing, they're staring, look this way, go for the gun, and then boom, shoot him, and then he's like, got no bullets. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, for all of those reasons, there's no way this wasn't going to make my list, especially my list. It's just, it's like you said, like it's fun, it's whimsical, but like there is a level of there's like a swashbuckling kind of nature to it, but it's also like it's also kind of intense. Like some of the violence, like when he shoots the guy out of the bathtub, like yeah, it's funny, but it's like it's crazy. Yeah, exactly. People are fucking dying. People are being hanged, throughout the movie. There's all the like Blondie gets left in the desert and he just fucking bakes in the sun for 20 minutes. Like there's some intense shit in this movie that is like not really typical of other Westerns.
Yeah.
Like certainly you would never see this in a John Ford movie or something like that. Like this is a very, very different kind of Western. And it's not about like the relationships of people or like the lords and the ladies, so to speak. It's just about like 3 fucking degenerates chasing after gold, and I really like that.
Yeah, so, or like when that fat guy beats the shit out of Tuco, and it's just like beating on him.
There was that's why I was struggling to put so either Once Upon a Time in the West or For a Few Dollars More, because For a Few Dollars More there's a scene where they get basically caught by like some soldiers, and they're torturing one of the characters. I forget exactly who it was, and the villain in that movie, I mean the entire thing is predicated on like him killing his girlfriend or something. Like it was really like it's a lot darker and it's like a lot closer to my sensibilities, but again, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Ennio Morricone, like the score, he scored all the rest of the movies too, but like there's just a level of like legend to it that like you just can't ignore. Yeah.
Well, even though we didn't even like that shit is like transcendent level, like and that style of like having a motif for every character, and that what is it, where they all show up and it's like freeze frame their name, the motif.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you Tarantino. Oh wait. Yeah.
Tarantino, he loves what he loves, and he loves to show how much he loves it.
Pay homage.
If I ever like get on like any level where I can make stuff, like believe me, I will do the same thing. Like it's just,
why wouldn't you, right? Yeah.
It's just cinema. It's like
exactly
they did that really well. I'm just gonna
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we both had a lot to say about this one because, I mean, there's a lot. There's like other like smaller scale movies, obviously, that are later down the list. But like, this had to get slotted in at some point. Like you can't not have Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on your list.
I'm gonna go to my grave loving this film. Like this might be one of the last things I see before I'm dead. Like I'm dying.
I would I'd like to see like a film print of it one day. I've never seen that. But yeah, one of the actually great experiences that I've got to do that I'm so grateful I got to do was when I saw the Hateful Eight, the Roadshow version. The Hateful Eight, you can say what you want, like you can go one way or the other about it, but the whole point of the Roadshow was the great kind of I forget what it's called, like the overture, right? And it's all score, and then there's the intermission, and it's all just like extended score because he had Ennio Morricone do the score for that film, and he won an Oscar for it. So to experience that, like in a theater, was like really, really fucking cool to just sit there and just listen to that music that that he made. Also, another one of the 2020s casualties, Morricone. But
because I mean, and like he didn't even die from COVID. I mean, COVID just
he was just old.
Blew Italy up. So that's gotta tell you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's an Emma, like people say that like, you having something to live for is like what extends a lot of people's lifespans. And like, I feel like because he died in like June or July or something, I feel like if COVID hits your country the way that it does and you're 91, you're just like, I'm good. I've accomplished things. Yeah.
Unfortunately, but yeah, he's one of the absolute greatest composers of all time. And this is, I think Once Upon a Time in the West is They're like 1A and 1B. They're kind of close.
They're close, yeah.
They're kind of close because, like, man, the harmonica, like,
Yeah.
that is like that is powerful, and like the fucking guitar, like when dude shows up, what's his name shows up and he kills those kids.
Yeah, I forget his name.
Henry Fonda, right?
Yeah, Henry Fonda was in that, yeah.
Yeah, Henry Fonda, and he's like, he shoots the kids, and then like he comes out and you hear the guitar. It's like that's a score that gives you a feeling. Like you feel something, and like when you hear that harmonica, when like the train passes and you hear the harmonica,
yeah.
whoo, man, that it's 1A and 1B for me. I really love both of them. But they're both like the perfect encapsulation of the Sergio Leone style plus that score.
Yeah.
Put together, and it creates this extremely cinematic experience that's just unparalleled.
Yeah.
You know?
Very, very, very well put. Yeah. You're right.
Cool. So yeah, I think that's it for this block of 10
This
films.
batch.
This has been really, really fun so far.
It's going to get more interesting too. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and like, well, the good thing is like, there's more films that we haven't discovered from each other that we're like, okay, now I gotta watch that.
Right,
you know?
right. Yeah.
So cool. All right. So yeah, thanks everybody. Hopefully we'll see you guys again in the future. And thanks a lot. Take care.
Sure. See ya.